Okay, I think we're live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 4 of State of Disunion. I have a very special guest with me this evening, in the flesh, the Little Platoon, sat right next to me. How are you?
I'm ill, but otherwise I'm good. Chat will have to let us know if you can actually hear us, because we're using one microphone, which is going to make these things sound slightly peculiar. But as long as we're audible, well, that's fine. I'm sure we are.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do tell us if we're too quiet or too loud, or you just hate the sound of our voices, which could be possible.
Well, the simple answer to that one is you can just piss off. But yeah.
Don't demonetize it yet.
I was going to say the one that I can't say because we're still 40 seconds into a stream, but I didn't say that, so we're not demonetized yet.
Right, yeah, so episode 4 of State of Disunion. Thanks everyone for being here. Obligatory, if you want to support me, there's a link in the channel, and I guess we can get going. So I thought tonight we would do the Proust Questionnaire. Have you heard of the Proust Questionnaire, Ben?
Yeah, I have a feeling we did this years ago, and I completely forgot what it contains. And then you said, well,
it contains questions.
Should we think about it before we go live? And I said, nah, we don't need to do that. And now we just had a quick glance at the questions and realized that, yeah, maybe some forethought might have aided the answers, but sod it. We're just going to go. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Atom Gray in the chat says, sound is good, lads. So thank you for saying that. That's encouraging. So just a little history lesson there, history lesson. This is from the Vanity Fair website. So short paragraph about the Proust Questionnaire, obviously named after the famous French author Marcel Proust, whose In Search of Lost Time, à la recherche du temps perdu, is, I think, the longest novel ever written. And it also contains, I think, certainly one of the longest sentences ever in any language, in any book. It's so long that it can wrap around the base of a wine bottle 17 times. Very colourful character indeed. But the Proust Questionnaire, says Vanity Fair, has its origins in a parlour game popularised, though not devised, by Proust, who believed that in answering these questions, the questions Ben and I are about to answer, we reveal our true nature. So basically, we're revealing our true nature to you this evening.
Or we just lie all the way through.
Oh,
no one's any the wiser.
Yes. Right. God, I'm going to need more wine. Some of these questions are pretty deep. What is your idea of perfect happiness? Ben, let's start with you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, God. I don't have an idea of perfect happiness. Certainly not when I have a cold. Everything feels shit. Perfect happiness, contextually, YouTube letting videos pass copyright. That's nice. I would like that more often, please. Otherwise, I don't know, sitting down, relaxing with wine and conversation.
So what you're doing now?
Kind of this.
That's good to know.
Except that without the cold.
Without the cold?
Yeah.
No one wants a cold.
No. What's yours?
Well, preferably not getting the cold you currently have. That would be good.
Too late, you're going to get it.
Perfect happiness. Yeah, I think the same, really. Maybe a nice little cottage in the middle of a forest, no television, no human beings really within sight. I have a gun in case any do show up. I get the odd visitor. I communicate entirely with letters and pigeon carriers, maybe. And I have a dog, and at the most, technologically, apart from, the wheel and so on, I have a radio, so I can tune into the outside world or listen to music when Classic FM isn't lecturing me about white privilege.
And a computer with the internet and a microphone, otherwise you can't do this.
That's true. That's true.
Even poorer and less employed.
Well, there's no need to get personal.
Cottage by a river. I want water. Either house overlooking sea or cottage with river at bottom of garden. That would be nice. Because I like the idea that, if the family come around, you can either throw them in the lake and drown them, or you can jump in and get swept away, and then they'll think, oh no, what's happened? He's drowned himself. And you think, yes, I have, because otherwise it's family.
So, to be clear, your idea of perfect happiness is the ability to throw your family and drown them in a lake?
Yes. Or river, because the river can sweep you away somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that does indeed reveal your true nature. I think Proust was absolutely right about this questionnaire. Well, I think that pretty much dispenses with one. I think.
I mean, well, the question of perfect happiness has been discussed and debated since the dawn of philosophy, and no one has yet lit upon a proper definition of it. So, yeah, I don't think there is such a thing as perfect happiness anyway, and I don't think there's a perfect answer to a question about perfect happiness because it's fundamentally indefinable, but as good a stab as we're likely to make.
I think being with God as a Christian, I suppose I'm bound to say
I
that.
can't think of anything worse.
That is the idea of perfect. I said joy. Maybe happiness isn't quite the right word. Happiness has the flavour of pleasures about it. You know, sensual pleasure, wine, nicotine, things like this. Not joy. Anyway, number 2, greatest fear.
Being locked in a room with someone whose idea of greatest happiness is being with God.
This is off to a swimming start, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't. Loss of friends and family members, like ill-timed and undeserved death.
So your greatest fear is what most people would answer for their idea of perfect happiness.
Yes, I suppose. But I stress sort of like ill-timed death or undeserved death because that's different than obviously sometimes you want to off people and then you're not sad if they die. But there are other people whom you'd theoretically at least be sad to lose. So that, or I don't know, prohibition. That's never fun. If they bring that in, mind you, I kind of like breaking the rules, so I guess I might take some perverse happiness in moonshine, as many people did. Losing my voice.
I wish you would sometimes.
Dementia. I'm going to say dementia. Dementia is by far, greatest fear, I think.
Say again?
Dementia.
Sorry?
No, that's deafness. You've misheard appropriately.
Right. That, dementia is, I suppose, a common answer to that question. I think mine is probably being trapped in a room or a house with a bear outside of it, wanting to get into that house.
Surely it's worse if the bear's already inside the house.
No, well, yes, that's panic. That's terror, not fear.
Being immediately attacked by a bear.
Yes. You're not really in a state of fear at that point, are you? You should have given up. You're in a state of resignation. Fear implies hope and the possibility of survival.
I don't think it does. I don't think my response to being mauled by a bear would be resignation. Fuck it, there goes my leg.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do, apparently. If you're being attacked by a bear, you're supposed to crawl into the fetal position and just hope that the damage isn't too bad.
I read that you're supposed to stand up very big and make a loud noise and they get scared.
I think that's before they've started mauling you to death.
Oh, yeah.
They're not scared of you at that point.
They've already started.
You've demonstrated your inability to fight back.
Yeah, that's a fair point. In which case, I guess, fetal position, because there's no exposed limbs that they could tear off quite so easily.
That was DiCaprio's mistake.
Yeah. Okay, attacked by bear. No, threat of attack by bear.
Threat of attack by bear. Other greatest fears. I don't really have any conventional fears. That's the thing. I don't want to be a dick and say I have no fears. Like I'm like what's his face? The German director Werner Herzog.
Oh,
he was famously on a plane that was experiencing such bad turbulence that the air hostesses themselves were in floods of tears and they were begging everyone to put their oxygen masks on. And Werner Herzog looked up at the air hostess and said, "I fear nothing." And something like, "I will face death with open eyes," that kind of thing.
Isn't that supposed to be the point of the oxygen masks? Is that they make you slightly high because of concentration, and then you don't really mind that you're plummeting to your death? They won't save your life.
No.
But they might make your death slightly more euphoric.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that is apparently the case. So no, I don't have any conventional fears, but I'm sure I do fear things. I fear London in the same way that Frodo feared Mordor. I fear being stabbed by a random lunatic. I fear any harm coming to my dog. That's about it, really. Oh, absence of alcohol in the house. I do fear that. But that might be the answer to the next question, which is, what trait do you most deplore in yourself?
Oh, goodness. I've been answering first all like the last two. It's your turn. You go first.
Okay. The trait you most deplore in yourself. Christ, we should have prepared these answers. I cannot think of an answer to that. Indolence. I find it far too easy to sit back and do nothing, even though I know I ought not to be sitting back and doing nothing. I've gotten better at it. See, this is the problem with being a Catholic with a small c. You don't buy into the Protestant work ethic with quite as much ideological vigor as you might do otherwise. Every time I see the Protestant work ethic on display in constant calls to increase GDP and all the rest of it, I think, no, I'm going to be the one who enjoys leisure and listens to the birds, be as the lilies of the valley. But I think I find it a little bit easy to do that. So indolence.
So Catholic countries invariably go socialist and become shitholes.
But they're often happier.
I'm not sure that's quite true.
I'd rather be in Italy eating Italian food and have less money.
Italians all hate each other.
Well, I'm sure hate can be productive.
Communitarianism, but the implication of communitarianism is that you have a defined community and anybody outside of it can go to hell.
But we all hate each other in the UK now.
True, but for different reasons. Nothing really very much to do with religion. Not from from the English perspective anyway. Maybe there are certain religious importations which have imports even which have brought a degree of hatred with them.
Can't imagine what you're referring to.
No, it's just vague terms.
Yeah, Casper in the chat has said, "I'm Italian. We do all hate each other."
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't buy the happiness in community, and the Catholic social teaching that always leads to distributism, which is just a fancy religious name for communism. So no, it can go to hell. Trait most deplore myself: propensity to get sick before podcasts. It's a mix probably of obsession and caution. So obsession is I'm very different. I have more of the Protestant work ethic. And if I have a thing that I think I need to be doing, I tend to do that, and I will keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, even if it's basically done. But
Are
could be
you
better.
referring to your constant re-uploads of Peter Pan?
Yeah. Basically that, yes. There's a version ready to go. It's just not as good as the one that I subsequently spent a whole week fine-tuning. So I want that one up because it's a point of principle. And then, it's sort of driven to distraction by that. And then on the other side of that, I guess, is caution, which is that I don't tend to do things when I probably should. I take a lot of convincing before I try something.
Yes, you can be quite unadventurous isn't the word, but I think that would be just. I think you won't try a new food, for instance, unless you've been utterly, like, scholastically convinced that you ought to try it. And then you'll try it and you'll go, that's not bad.
I just don't see any need to try it. Food is boring. I don't care about food. If I could get away without food, I would happily do it.
Well, they do have, like, there's a thing called Huel.
It's like I know that. Yeah.
Sludge, and you just drink it and it gives you everything you need. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like crisps, though. I think it's nice. And chips and sausages, actually. So actually, there are a few basic food stuffs that I would.
Yes, you do like phallic-shaped meat.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Phalluses.
Oh God, we're only on question 3. What trait number 4? What is the trait you most deplore in others? Well, you've done yourself too first, and I'll answer again first for this one. I would deplore many things in others. Snobbery, actually.
Oh dear. Shall I leave?
No, because so snobbery often gets conflated with elitism. So people who uphold standards in a particular area of life, whether that be dress or literature or the way that you speak or the way that you behave, any sort of serious standards, anything in which an elite standard can be constructed and maintained, and by extension anything that falls short of that standard being accused of some form of mediocrity or substandardness, that's often that is elitism. I think elitism has a place. I think standards have a place, but it's often confused with snobbery, and I'm not sure I'd be capable of giving a dictionary definition of snobbery, but I don't know how to define it. It's just you meet some people and they latch upon what are ultimately completely meaningless immaterial factors in their judgments of other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think middle class people in particular are very snobbish.
Oh yeah, but they have a type of midwit snobbery, which is
You know, I won't shop at Iceland because that's where the poor people go. That's just snobbery.
yeah, like unearned snobbery, I think is objectionable.
Yeah, unearned superiority.
Mhm.
There you go.
I'm trying to think. I think chat probably has some suggestions of least favorite traits in other people.
Yes,
I've
I'm
seen
just looking at
slow
them.
walkers pop up. I agree with slow walkers.
Yeah, slow walkers, people who walk out of shops without looking left or right to see if they're about to plow into someone.
Yeah, I have long thought we should put indicators on people. Especially with the families walking four abreast down pavements, and window shoppers in London as well need indicators and traffic lights as well. Traits in other people.
You're just going to describe me?
Yeah. No, it's no. I don't know. Most of my least favorite people, most of my favorite people can be found in YouTube comment sections, but also a lot of my least favorite people can be found in YouTube comment sections. So anyone who begins a comment with "bruh" is almost guaranteed to be a grade A moron with nothing worth saying.
Someone in the chat is about to start a comment with bruh. You just wait.
I've maybe seen one comment in all my time on YouTube beginning "bruh," which actually, it's okay ironically, but when people do it because that's their mode of expression, normally what happens next is they say something completely mind-bogglingly asinine, and they think it's a criticism and they haven't actually listened to what you're saying. Criticism of points you haven't made, that's irritating.
Yep.
Bad faith reading is very irritating. General stupidity, I think. Stupidity is difficult.
So a lot of people, yeah, there we go. Jared Bull, bruh.
I hate you all. Go away.
Everyone's doing it now. Yeah, no, stupidity. Other people in the chat have mentioned stupidity a little bit before. Yeah, I don't mind. There's some people are stupid in a sort of harmless, naive way. I'm frequently stupid, I hope in a harmless, naive way. But was it Christopher Hitchens said, and by the way, my first exposure to the Proust Questionnaire was through Christopher Hitchens, who's because plenty of people have done this questionnaire. Ricky Gervais, I think, was a fairly recent one, and Christopher Hitchens was the first one I saw, and his answers were pretty good. And he said, never be, I think I remember the phrase he used, never be a witness or a party to stupidity or cruelty.
Yeah, it was Letters to You, I'm Contrarian, I think.
Right, yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's that. Cruelty to animals.
Oh, yeah.
On a completely left field suggestion, away from stupid people. That's yeah, I cannot abide that. What else is I mean, there are other. I guess the question was the singular trait you most deplore in others. So if we're having to reduce it to one, what would yours be?
It's going to have to be snobbery at the moment, but ask me next week and it will probably be cruelty or stupidity or something like that.
Okay.
But snobbery really, really gets on my tits. Genuine snobbery. Because when you encounter it, it's almost farcically, it's absolutely intolerable.
Yeah. Well, in which case, if we're picking one, I think it will have to be. Ooh. Oh, why is the word gone? Sophistry, sophistic arguments.
Okay, yeah.
Like people who argue for the sake of winning the argument and not because they actually believe what they're saying. In other words, people who are prepared to lie to you if they think it advances their cause.
Vorsh.
Yeah, people like Vorsh or Hassan. No, he falls under stupid more than malevolent, I think. But people who have no principles other than winning, I think is probably going to be my least favorite trait of all the human traits. So that moves us on, I think, then to question 5. Which living person do you most admire?
Oh my goodness me. It's going to have to be Joe Biden. Anyone that incompetent who can become the most powerful person in the world, and that they must have bags of talent. But in all seriousness, living person I most admire. I suppose it would have to be a writer, I suppose, some kind, or
There aren't a huge number of good living writers, though.
yeah.
But most of the people I like are dead.
Well, speaking of whom, Martin Amis.
Yeah.
He just died. For those in chat who haven't heard the news, Martin Amis died yesterday, which was a kick in the teeth. Not that I think either of us had no criticisms of his work, but a friend of Christopher Hitchens's, who was obviously an early influence on both of us.
Yeah, fine Proust artist.
Fine
would
Proust
have
artist,
abhorred a cliche like kick in the teeth.
Yes, he would have. That's why I used it, of course.
Of course, yeah, ironically,
by
of
design.
course, completely.
Oh, God. It's like being asked what you want for your birthday, and you've known all year. You've known for 364 days exactly what you wanted for your birthday, and someone asks you, and you forget. Living person. Do you have anyone come to mind for you?
I'm not a big admirer.
You like to be admired.
Yeah, the answer is me, obviously. No, I don't. No, my brain was sort of racked, or being racked with. There must be someone who is just like a really lovely, adorable person who everyone agrees is lovely and adorable, and no one would ever say a bad word about them. There must be someone like that.
Well,
Michael Palin.
There have been lots of people like that, but they keep being outed as nonces or something. There's people would have said that about Jimmy Savile at one point, and then lo and behold,
he does so much work for charity.
Yeah.
Oh no!
How could you say a word against him? Look at all the children he spends time with.
All the good work he did for hospitals. Oh no!
Someone, Jared Hall has written Davis Attenborough.
Davis Attenborough, yeah.
No,
yeah.
he's written Davis,
brother of David.
Yeah. But then even he's gone a bit AWOL.
Yeah, no,
climate
he
stuff.
used to be fantastic, and then they got him onto climate change, and now he won't shut up about things he doesn't know anything about.
Yeah,
that he's also being, I think, probably used by people who are slightly more vested in the politics of the thing than he is. I admire him, definitely. I don't know if I admire him the most, though. I admire his past work.
See, this is the problem. So many people that were brilliant or seemed to be brilliant either die or have died very recently. Do you remember there was that year a few years ago when like 10 celebrities, well-loved people just died? Yeah, it was David Bowie. It was that year. Yeah. I suppose the Queen would have been an answer, but again, she succumbed to the same thing. And she's dead now.
She succumbed to the same thing. Death.
Yes,
of natural causes.
Oh God, I don't know. Okay, admire implies that you. Which living person do you most admire leaves open the fact that they might have faults, but you admire them nonetheless. So I'm going to put in a mention for David Bentley Hart, Hart. He's an Eastern Orthodox theologian, but he's also a writer of fiction, poetry, genre-bending books. He has a Substack called Wind in the Leaves, which you should read. It's very interesting. He's got many faults. He's often quite pompous. I think he's terrible on politics, but he is just absolutely fascinating on about everything else. And he is one of the few writers I would pay a lot of money to keep reading. So yeah, David Bentley Hart. I think he's saying some really important things that need to be said. I'll go with him. What about you?
Yeah. I don't know. I might actually have to fail to answer this question. I can't think of an individual I would say I most admire.
Well, we can circle back if anyone occurs to you.
Yeah, leave a note next to that one.
Yeah. Well, I would, but it's a web page.
Good point.
We'll just have to remember
Make a mental note.
If you do, by the way, audience chat here, liquids or weird gaseous noises, we're drinking and we're smoking. So that's what that's what that is.
Has chat recommended anyone? We've got Freddie Flintoff has been mentioned. I would hope, ironically. You've got John Cleese.
I was thinking John Cleese, yeah.
Elon Musk from Franco Walker. Yeah, Elon Musk. I do admire Elon Musk, but that's not. Again, that's not to say that he's not a deeply flawed human being. I don't think. I think I would not like to nominate Elon Musk as the person I most admire, just because there must be someone who doesn't have children with every single female employee he sort of shacks up with. Yeah, although, but he does admirable things. That's the distinction. He does admirable things. He's not necessarily an admirable person. But then again, I'm struggling to think of admirable people. So
yeah, me too. Because I'd like to be able to point to some awesome general of some kind, or an epic politician. Someone like politically Disraeli or general
Boris
wise.
Johnson.
No, general wise. Because this occurred to me recently. We in a contemporary in contemporary Britain and America and the West generally, we are no longer able, as our ancestors were, to point with any ease to military figures that we admire. The only generals we admire are from ancient history, Alexander, or recent history, Napoleon, depending on where you fall on that quote. But he was undoubtedly a talented general.
Yes.
We don't have any great military figures or even adventurers anymore that we can point to, because those, if Ernest Shackleton existed today, the great polar explorer, I'd say him, probably someone like that. But we don't have any heroes of that stature, of that kind.
No.
If we do, I haven't heard of them.
Well, we don't really have an armed forces anymore, so
No.
it's hard to have generals and admirals when you don't have ships or armies.
Yeah, I read recently that Poland's army is due to become bigger than ours next year or something,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Along with their economy.
Yes. Mind you, at least unlike the Germans, we're not training ours with broomsticks. So there is that. Yeah, it's so much easier to nominate people I really hate. I can't nominate people. As soon as I started saying Germany, I thought, oh, Angela Merkel. Yeah, I don't like her very much. Yeah, that's such an easy question to answer. So I hope it comes up later in the questionnaire. Let's move on from that one, because I'm not going to be able to come up with a name.
Fair enough. So question 6. What then is your greatest extravagance?
Not an incredibly extravagant person. I would say, well, no, because not even that. I don't actually drink that often unless I'm on a stream, in which case, mind you, I am on streams a lot, so that's kind of defeats the object, doesn't it? I would guess alcohol is still there. It used to be a much bigger one than it is, but otherwise, greatest extravagance, no, I don't spend much. I don't go in for fashion, particularly not a clothes person.
He's in his pajamas right now. I
actually am in my pajamas right now. Yeah. Yeah, I would guess alcohol, which is a boring answer.
Someone's written that widescreen monitor.
Oh, that's a point. Occasionally, yeah, I will make purchases which I look back on and think, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Like the lightsabers.
I've only got one of
the
those.
Guitar,
I just have two. Well, I have 3 good guitars.
And 2 lightsabers.
One lightsaber, two blades though. I will buy another one, because you need one. There's no point fighting yourself with a lightsaber. Yeah, like looking at a PC which is about £8,000 and thinking, you know what, I don't really need this, but I could get it. And it would be helpful. It would make things better. Although actually improving my internet speed would be way better than upgrading the PC. So occasionally, like once every year, I'll do a big extravagant expense, but I think it's compensated by the fact that it is only once a year.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just hoard money. So yeah, alcohol or one expense a year. What would be yours?
Alcohol. Yeah, there's no point denying it.
It's the best extravagance.
Well,
it's the one that leads to so many other extravagances, which are worthwhile and civilization building.
Yeah, I don't tend to have. Well, I suppose we've been discussing only material extravagances thus far. There are all sorts of emotional and psychic extravagances. Psychological.
I don't have any of those. Emotions are for weak people.
Oh yes, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm the Vulcan.
Yeah. No, I'm not a big shopper. I've never thought, I've never woken up on the weekend and thought, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to wander around irritably with hot feet around other members of the public, coughing and sneezing and being in the way, and spending money I don't have on random shit. I've never thought that's what I'm going to do today. But I will pop to the shop, get a couple of bottles of red in, come back, and enjoy the books I already have, which I'm occasionally extravagant when it comes to buying books. And dog insurance, that's an extravagance. My dog's just come and he's kind of disturbing the stream. Woody, go and lay down, Woody. Yeah, alcohol for me.
You don't approach the microphone, Woody, unless you've got something worthwhile saying.
Yes, my dog is sniffing the microphone and he has nothing to say.
Well, that was a much easier question to answer. However, question 7: what is your current state of mind? Addled?
With what?
That's cold and wine, and stress and video preoccupations.
Yeah.
Addled generally covers it, I think. What's yours?
I'm in the moment at the moment.
What's that? What does that mean?
It means that nothing much is on my state of mind except this stream, although
So vacant.
vacant. Somewhere in the back of my head is the worrying realization that I don't have much money, but I'm generally happy, which is good, I think.
I think Mr. Brown says butt plug is his current state of mind, or fooked is his current state of mind. I can't work out which one was the answer to that question.
Yeah, how can butt plug be a state of mind?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure it can be, but I wouldn't want to find out. Anxious from Rand's little
state of hind, perhaps, but anxious. I have to move to Seattle in about a month. Ooh. Yeah, I'd be anxious if I was moving to Seattle as well.
I don't know. That could be an exciting thing. I know very little about Seattle. But
well, it's like the absolute epicenter of wokery.
I think you're thinking of Portland.
Where is Seattle? Northwest?
No. Oh, my American geography is going to fail me now. I thought I knew where Seattle was, but now you asked the question.
Seattle's near the border with Canada in the Northwest, I think. And it's apparently really horrible.
Chat can tell us where Seattle is. I don't think it is. I have a feeling
Seattle is very liberal.
It is very liberal. Okay. Mind you, that's true of about half the states in America. Portland is the capital of woke, famously, and then San Francisco, I think. Seattle. But, I mean, it depends what you're moving to Seattle for. If you're moving to Seattle for job opportunities, that's anxious, but it could be exciting. So good luck either way, I suppose.
Yeah, good luck. Well, I think that covers state of mind.
Probably does.
I'm not quite sure how to go about answering that.
Well, you answered that.
Yeah.
Move on. Your answer.
What gave that away? Question 8. What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Oh, almost all of them, really. I think patience is an overrated virtue sometimes. Situationally, patience is an overrated virtue. Sometimes you do actually just have to do something. And sometimes, sometimes waiting for things to happen, or waiting for people to change, or waiting for propitious moments is not always the best thing to do. Sometimes it goes back to the flaw question earlier, but I said sort of caution would be what I would consider one of my greater flaws. I think patience is sort of synonymous, at least partially synonymous with that. I don't really consider patience a very worthwhile thing. Of course, it is situation dependent. Sometimes patience is important, but it's often advocated as this sort of uniformly and universally good virtue, and I don't think that it is. Likewise, charity. I think people can be too charitable. That's one of the major problems at the moment we have in anything political, when people say, most people are not dyed-in-the-wool wokists, for example. They're not political radicals by constitution. What they are is people who basically believe that we ought to be as charitable as possible to every single minority group, or any group that anyone cares to name. So it's the desire to be nice to people, which is an expression of charity, which leads people to go in for very bad and stupid ideas, which are not nice in practice, but which are sold to us under the label of niceness. It's one of the reasons wokeness creeps through society so quickly, is that everyone fundamentally has this desire to be nice. And I think, no, maybe we should be a bit meaner more often to things that we know objectively to be bad.
I have a similar answer. I was going to say kindness, which is similar to niceness. It's one of those things that you could sew onto a pillow and stick on Instagram. People constantly harp on about it. Be nice, be kind. And no matter who you're talking to, be nice, be kind. And I think what the phenomenon you've just described, what's really going on is that there's the implication there is the absence of judgment. The implication behind be nice, be kind all the time to everyone is judgments, moral judgments, are invalid. You're not allowed to make them. Everything is equal. Nothing is better than anything else. All behavior is equal. All lifestyles are equal, etc.
Cultures are equal.
All cultures are equal. We should be capable of making judgments and discriminations, but sometimes to make those judgments and discriminations, you have to step on some toes. You can't be constantly nice and kind and fluffy. You have to be able to put a bit of the old, Billy O preacher fear of God into people sort of thing. You have to be able to say, no, that's wrong, or you're being sinful, or you're being a dick.
Yes. And Rose Tico in Star Wars, who says the most asinine line possible, which is, that's how we win, not fighting what we hate, saving what we love. As though
by blowing stuff
as
up.
though those two things are actually separable to begin with. She is predictably entirely wrong and has it the wrong way about. Fighting what you hate is a way of saving what you love. You should be more prepared to stand up for the things that you love violently if needs be, metaphorically for the purposes of YouTube. Yeah, patience and niceness are vastly overrated, I think.
Yes.
Politeness, on the other hand, is not.
I always go back to Oscar Wilde's statement on that. A gentleman is someone who is never rude except on purpose. You should be polite to everyone that you first meet, just automatically. But the moment they give you grounds not to be nice to them, I mean, by all means, grit your teeth, be patient if you want to. But yeah, they kind of lose their right to be treated with respect at that point.
They become subhuman.
No, I didn't say that. Right, moving on to question number... God, there are 35 questions.
9, I think
we might have to split this into 2 parts.
No, we're making good progress. I think we're on 9.
Question 9, yeah. On what occasion do you lie?
Mm-hmm.
On what occasion don't I lie?
That's the Cretan paradox, isn't it? A man from Crete says all men from Crete are liars.
Oh, I thought I thought you just meant cretin.
Oh no, because I would have pronounced it correctly. It should be cretin, not Cretan. Yeah, but if I tell you that I always lie, that's an expression of the Cretan paradox, because
you're
either
telling the truth.
Yeah. The paradox can be unwound because ultimately I am therefore telling the truth, I think is how that paradox unwinds. But I try not to generally, but if I were to slightly rephrase the question, what occasions do I think it would be permissible to lie? I think to save life. So it's the Anne Frank thing. Like anyone who's 100% committed to sort of universally saying, I will always tell the truth, is the person who says when the Nazis turn up at the door, Anne Frank's in the attic. I think it's acceptable to lie in that situation because you are saving the life of somebody from nasty people who particularly want to do nasty things to them. That's an acceptable occasion to lie. I haven't yet had an Anne Frank in my attic, so I haven't had an opportunity to deploy that lie. Otherwise, sometimes for peace of mind, if I know my mum will nag me for something which is incredibly trivial and inconsequential, and there's no point getting into it. So she'll say, have you put money in an ISA this month? And I'll say, yes, I have. And I haven't. But, it's to save her nagging me. She'll still end up talking about it for hours anyway. And then I just sort of affect interest, which is, I suppose, another form of lying. Or there's lies by omission, like when you don't say something that you probably should say, thereby misleading. I try not to do that so often, but white lies would be the overarching term, I think. There, what would yours be?
I just try not to lie. I think like most people, if they're being honest, ironically, not lying, most people will admit that at some point in their life, usually when you're younger and you've made mistakes, you do confect a few lies, but that it becomes a web of lies, and you end up catching yourself out, and it's an extremely unpleasant state in which to live, trying to remember your own lies. So when I was younger, I did that on 1 or 2 occasions, and it came back to bite me, and I thought, no, it's wrong to lie. Living in truth and being as truthful as possible, as often as possible within reason, is the best way to go. But yeah, the whole Anne Frank thing, I mean, that's Immanuel Kant, isn't it? The categorical imperative. No, I broadly agree with you there. I think, generally speaking, honesty is the best policy. I'm just trying to fit as many cliches into this stream as possible.
In honor of Martin Amis.
Yes.
Well, he's dead now, so who's going to hold you to account for them?
Realistic Delinquent has said, I lie about my race.
Oh, no, I do that all the time. Yeah, no, well, back when I did job interviews and things, that's, I think, a perfectly acceptable way. You can lie to abuse badly constructed state functions. So when, for example, it is in your interest because the state decides that Black people are prioritized over white people in hiring decisions, gay people are prioritized over straight people in hiring decisions, the more disabled you can be, the better, then I absolutely will tick other in every single identity-based box because I fundamentally disagree with the premise of identity as a means of making hiring decisions.
Yeah.
So in that situation, I don't feel bad about maximizing my chances in employment by abusing a system I don't think should exist to begin with.
Yeah.
In the same way as, if there were a way of getting away with it, I would absolutely lie about my tax returns. I don't think there is, and I try to obey the law as much as possible, and I haven't lied, for the sake of anyone who might be listening, about my tax returns, because I haven't filed any yet. When it comes to it, it's that moral obligation to go against an unjust law, I think, can include lying to the state when the state does something you fundamentally think it should not be doing.
Well, the state frequently lie to us.
Yes. Or, but all the time. I mean, that's basically the function of any government press office, is to lie to the people.
Yeah.
I was a journalist. I dealt with press statements. Press statements are just officialized lies to people.
Well, I was once in PR, and I know how I did all those press releases that you used to get as a journalist. Man.
Oh, yes.
I
wrote them.
I can tell you that it's not so much that there are lies in those; it is just lies of omission. Is this thing environmentally friendly? Yes, because I've excluded all of the evidence to the contrary and kept in that one bit that would suggest maybe it is. Yeah. Well, I think that covers question 9.
Yes. On what occasion do you lie when the taxman comes calling, and when the government arrives and says it's here to help me?
Yes. What was it? The 4 or 5 most terrifying words in any language.
Yeah, I am from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah. Anyway, question 10. What do you most dislike about your appearance?
Well, I answered first last time. It's your turn.
I'm too skinny for my own liking, and apparently I have a big nose, and my hair does funny things.
If you say apparently I have a big nose, that can't be something you dislike. That's just something you've been told about yourself.
But now I see it every time I look in the mirror. That's why I got rid of all my mirrors.
Oh, okay.
No, I think I'd like to be strong. I'd like to look stronger. Because I think, as a man, I think it would be foolish to deny that plenty of that factors into your view of yourself as a man, doesn't it? I mean, it affects your ability to woo people in a romantic way. It affects your self-image. It affects your confidence, how you perceive yourself to be physically. And I've always resented the fact that I look, in my opinion, rather puny. So I do the whole Jordan Peterson thing and try and walk, straight back and walk upright. But I just wish I looked a bit stronger, a bit more physically capable. I can run like shit off a shovel. I do know that. I'm very fast. If anyone chased me, I might not be able to fight them, but I could outrun them, unless they were Usain Bolt. But yeah, you?
I got fat during lockdown. Most of that's gone.
No, you didn't. You say that you did.
I think putting on 3 stone in 6 months constitutes getting fat. It was very unhealthy.
It's not like you're that guy in The Whale.
No, although it felt like that. And then I had to go to the doctors because I had weird sort of heart movements, because I was genuinely very unhealthy at that point. But I did hire a personal trainer who's got most of it off. The stuff that remains probably irritates me more than most other things. Otherwise, I have the classic Englishman's problem, which is terrible teeth, which I keep meaning to get fixed, except that I really hate dentists. So
no, see, now wait, I have to jump in here. Teeth, it annoys me when Englishmen say that their teeth bothers them in any way. For the record, your teeth are fine. They're no worse than the average Englishman's. Mine.
That's not an encouraging thing. They're no worse than the average Englishman.
Look, do you have Tom Cruise's teeth? No, but which Englishman does?
That's testament to the low average standard of dental hygiene in this country, because of long histories of inbreeding on a small island and, generally speaking, nationalized dentistry, which doesn't do any good for anybody. There's to say it's average for the English is to say that it's optimal by the rest of the world's standards. The English people are famous for this. I think Martin Amis again described his own mouth as like a distended graveyard, which I would say of my own as well. So as soon as I decide that I won't put up with it anymore, I will go to a dentist and get it fixed, because at least you can fix it. It's just that I really, really, really hate dentists. And so I'm avoiding it and have been for years.
Well, people are justified in hating dentists. It's one of the very few, well, I say there are other areas of science and technology as well, but dentistry really took off between 1939 and 1945. And that's why I think all dentists are, am I allowed to say this on YouTube? Secretly,
what are you about
politically suspect.
Well, you're allowed to say that. Most
I don't like
YouTubers
them.
are secretly politically suspect.
I bit my dentist when I was about 7 or 8. Lovely guy, Irish guy. And he put his hand in my mouth, and I just bit.
I'm so glad you said that. I could have gone somewhere else.
And I bit down hard. And I think he pulled it away and said something like, in an Irish accent, "You little shit."
No, mine weren't. Well, no, I never bit my dentist. I've always been very nice to my dentist. They've just not always been very nice to me. Mostly through incompetence, it must be said. But that's the problem when you go to an NHS dentist. A, you can't see them anyway because they have no appointments because it's not profitable to them for them to do that. But B, when you do finally get an appointment, usually they use you as an excuse to train some sort of spotty, freckly teenager who's somehow, usually via family connections, blagged the job as a trainee dentist. And they are absolutely appalling. So my dentist at home, an NHS dentist, I had to have the same tooth filled 6 times in the space of, I think it was a month, because it was the same person every time. They kept putting it in, it kept falling out, or it crumbled, or it fell out again, or it crumbled.
Didn't they leave an instrument in there?
Well, I went private for the first time about a year ago, and they did the x-ray, and they said, yeah, that tooth, they've left some equipment in that tooth. And I just thought, yeah,
well, like a spanner. It's just a spanner at the back of your mouth.
It's a long, hard black line of something. We don't know exactly what it is, but I've got some dentist equipment somewhere in my mouth still to this day, and it's probably been there for many years. So that's A, the reason I hate dentists, but B, the reason when I do go back, it will not be my NHS one, it will be the private one. It will charge me a fortune, but at least they'll remember to take their tools with them when they leave.
Poor Platoon. Sorry, man. Someone's really commiserating with you there. And Not Brian says, Roger Prentice, the apprentice dentist.
I think Roger Prentice might be a reference, but I don't think I understand it. So I will say yes, and we'll move on.
No, I'm not finished with dentists. I once had to have my teeth very thoroughly cleaned in Dulwich in London, because I was living there at the time, and they were covered in tartar and everything. Apparently, I wasn't cleaning my teeth with a good enough technique, so they cleaned it with what I can only describe as a tiny chainsaw, and I was literally crying with pain by the time they'd finished. My gums were bleeding, and he specifically said to me, under no circumstances are you to do anything that could stain them again. I walked out of that dentist and I walked straight to an M&S and I bought a huge bottle of wine, red wine, teeth-staining red wine. I took it back home and drank the freaking lot because I thought, no way, you don't get to chainsaw my gums off and tell me I can't drink.
It's always a slightly irritating and judgmental question when you go there and they say, do you smoke? And you think, well, there's a reason you're asking that question. You know I do. Well, I did at the time. I don't anymore. You're the expert. Why are you asking me that question?
Yeah. I bet they all go off and smoke afterwards as well. They have a high suicide rate, dentists.
It's like doctors asking you if you drink. And you say yes. And they say, well, how much? And then you say, well, if I counted, I'd have a problem. So...
Right. So that's question 10.
Weight and teeth, the perpetual English problems.
Yes, yes. Question 11. Which living... so you've been waiting for this question, I think.
Now I'm going to have too much choice.
Yes. Which living person do you most despise? Go.
There's a bit in... I've been rewatching Veep a lot recently because it's just quite good and fun and entertaining. This question is asked of Selina Meyer, and she tries to give a nice sort of morally acceptable answer. She says, well, I try not to hate anyone because I think hate is just a really bad use of, and gets interrupted by the journalist who says, oh, most people say Hitler. She says, yeah, Hitler is also quite a good answer. But, I mean, Hitler's obviously a really obvious... Oh, it's a living person as well, and as far as we know, Hitler is dead. So, probably not. Now, living person I most despise. There is so much choice. However, I will have to go with... Oh, no, because it varies depending on the day.
The minute varies on the minute, knowing you.
It does. I mean, the list of names is going through my mind at light speed at the moment. you and
Of course,
your
yes. I would
dog
expect nothing
yesterday,
less.
kicking me in the back of the head all fucking night. No, I can't hate Joe Biden because I don't think he's compos mentis. It's like hating a vacuum
Or a mollusk.
or a mollusk. I can't hate Keir Starmer. He's so boring. It would be some sort of commie ideologue, I think. So the answer is, if I've been reading Owen Jones recently, the answer will be Owen Jones. If it's Ash Sarkar, it'll be Ash Sarkar. But that again is a contextual answer. Goodness, Vorsh, I really can't stand. Hassan Piker, I really can't stand. I'm sure I've missed some very obvious person. Chat, list people you hate, because I'll find one there somewhere that I'm sure that I'll.
Well, Melvin's just suggested Tony Blair.
That's a very good answer. Yes.
Yeah. I think he, more than any other prime minister in British history, has done more to screw the country up.
Yeah, that's true. Look, there's loads of good answers. Obama, AOC, yep,
Vorsh,
Greta
Hassan.
Thunberg.
Not AOC. She has lovely tits. Says Magnus. See, people keep saying this about AOC, that she's impossible to really hate because she's attractive. I don't see it. I mean, don't get me wrong. As a man with a certain level of, testosterone, penis, I see that she's attractive, but she's so unattractive personally that it's almost like my biology has been cancelled. It's been shut down. It doesn't work on her anymore, or she doesn't work on me anymore. She's too insufferable.
My dad said that of somebody on the train. He sat down opposite. So I sat down opposite this really, really attractive woman. That she's absolutely stunning. And then she opened her mouth. And that's the AOC response, I think. AOC is quite attractive until she starts speaking.
Yeah, you can do a good impression of her, can't you?
Oh,
are you going to treat chat to your impression of AOC?
No, I'm not drunk enough for impressions yet. It's just imagine, the most nasally, high-pitched, sort of generic American loudmouth, really.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Every time she speaks, I hate her. I can't think of anybody else who fluctuates so wildly on the attractiveness spectrum, because she's very attractive when she shuts up, but then she speaks, and then all of a sudden she's not only not attractive, she is actively very unattractive.
Yeah, if she were a gun-toting Christian Republican who wore modest flowery skirts, I'd probably travel there and ask her to marry me. But she's not, so
no.
Yeah. I don't know that I feel spoiled for choice with this question. I know that there are lots of people that aren't occurring to me.
Ilhan Omar is mentioned.
Oh yeah, no, she's pretty bad.
Not according to her brother.
Oh.
People on the bridge for Mr. Brown is a good choice.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Good choice, Mr. Brown. Good choice.
Oh right, man. If we're going that, then there's
when she speaks, my cock actually falls off.
No, Mr. Brown's just opened up an entirely new domain of hateable people. Ryan Johnson, J.J. Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy.
Ryan Johnson was mentioned.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson, of course he has been. There are so many of these people. Yeah, I'm struggling to narrow one down, but I've been listing more than you have, so it's your turn.
No, I think that about covers it for me. I try not to despise and hate anyone properly, if you see what I mean. I dislike plenty of people, but actually to despise someone, to really feel that visceral hatred, I think at that moment they've sort of won over you. So I try to abstract it almost. I don't like hating anything. Gonna have to disagree with you there, Mulif, on the Karens. I tend to think that Karen is just a word that people obsessed with identity politics use to dismiss white women as white women. I don't like the term, and I also know a very nice Karen in real life.
Oh no, that's a nice woman called Karen. That's not Karen as a descriptor. That very specifically describes.
Yeah, but it's racialized. It's a very racialized term, and I object to that.
Sort of. I don't know that. I don't think
no black women are called Karen.
No, because they're all no. Anyway,
so if you were to call them shenanes or whatever, you would be accused of racism, and that's why I object to the term
I'm sure
Karen.
there probably is a racialized alternative. I tend to associate Karen with very specifically sort of middle class to upper middle class white midwit woman, and they are a type.
And I know they're a type.
A woman above a certain age who wears the same haircut. And is the kind of person
blonde,
they're often blonde with relatively short, spiky hair. And the kind of person whose first recourse whenever they encounter any problem in a store is demanding to see the manager. That is an identifiable trope, I think. I don't think it's just been made up to dismiss white women generally. I think it is way more specific and useful than that. Because there are plenty of like alternatives to describe other sets of people, like chads and chuds and incels are all quite specific.
What's a chud?
I don't remember,
what a
but
chad
I
is.
think the movie cynic uses the term chud a lot, and I can't remember what his definition of it is, but I'm sure that it means something, probably. Chads, well, chad I think is a term incels tend to use to define sort of the stereotypical college jock who doesn't really have much going on upstairs, but all the girls like him.
Oh, that's not what I took to be chad. I thought chad was like, big burly traditional family man, gives the middle finger to wokery kind of a guy.
And that's what chads grow up to be, I think.
Oh, I see. They grow up to be intellectual as well.
Well-adjusted family man.
Yes. Don't forget Kevins, apparently. I used to work with a Kevin, and I can honestly say that I do not like them. As did you work with the same Kevin?
Yeah, but we always got on.
Yeah. Chad is alpha male in the USA.
Jared Hall has introduced another domain of hateable people, which is academia. Of course, you've got Robin DiAngelo.
Oh God, yeah.
Peter
Singer.
Peter Singer is not good.
Yeah.
Yes. Ibram Kendi.
Yeah.
Any race grifter, which is roughly half of academia at this point, and gender theorists. Judith Butler.
Yeah, Judith.
Interminable prose.
Oh, I'll tell you one person I do despise, actually. And his name's just escaped me.
Oh, that's helpful.
No. Slavoj Žižek.
Oh, I don't despise Žižek.
No, I tell you why I don't like him. I think he well, apparently, I don't know if this is true. I think he's from Slovenia, I think, or Slovakia, one of those two.
I think he's Slovakian, I think.
I think it's Slovenian, but I'm 100% sure it's Slovenia. He has apparently he is considered in Slovenia or Slovakia.
Well, he would have been Czechoslovakia when he was born, so
technically we're both geopolitics. Right. Apparently he's considered a fraud there, but he's only able to not be considered a fraud anywhere because he's in the West and he's speaking to gullible Western morons in the universities. But I don't like him because he says some pretty alarming thing. I think he defended communism's murders. Because theory, blah 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 blah, sniff, snort, blah 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 blah. I hate it. I hate him.
Yeah, no, he just doesn't really.
Doesn't make any sense.
I don't listen to him though because he doesn't make much sense. I guess before we move on, honorable mention for Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and yeah. Instead, so we haven't really given you one person we most despise. We've just given you a huge list of people we despise, pretty much equally for various different reasons. Moving on to a more positive question. Question 12. What is the quality you most like in a man?
Most like in a man. Oh, that is a hard one. Because I don't know if this is considered bad taste to plug one of my own videos in a stream, but my video "Fuck Boys, Thoughts and Feminists," I go into the sort of gender in the present day. It really interests me, this whole question of men and women and their relationships, the relation with each other. As for men, I think I don't know how to say it. I don't know if there's a word for it. I could say respect for women, but that doesn't quite cover it. Non-predatory respect for women.
So not being a rapist.
Well, it's not just that.
Can we push the bar slightly higher?
No, it's not just that. It's men who see in women not just an object of potential sexual conquest, but a subject with whom they can form fruitful relations of one kind or another. I think too many men, as a result of pornography and the society in which we live, and I would add to that the baleful effects of generations of feminism, see women either as purely as objects of sexual desire or nuisances, which may well be the case in the latter. But men who respect women in a deeper way than that phrase allows for. Otherwise, physical courage, courtesy, self-sacrifice. Yeah. Also, so here's the thing: not having a limp handshake. There's so no, because there's so much in that, isn't there? Like when I shake. Oh, also this plays into that as well. The ability to cook. I knew a guy in London. I won't be a dick and say much more than that, but I knew a guy in London, and he was in his 60s, early 60s, and he boasted about the fact that because he had the money, he didn't need to know how to cook. He could just order takeaway every single night. And he seemed really pleased about this fact. And I thought, for some reason that I've never been able fully to explain, because I think traditionally speaking, women tend to cook more than men anyway, but I found that incredibly emasculating. It really it disappointed me. I felt I looked upon him, differently after that. It was the boastfulness of it more than anything. It's all very well being able to say, "Look, I'm not Anthony Bourdain. I can't cook, a fillet of whatever." But it's another thing to boast about not being able to cook even basic things. There's something very emasculating about that, and that links in with the sort of the limp handshake when you meet someone and they, nice to meet you, and they present this sort of damp fish of a hand. Yeah, so that sort of thing. If that made any sense.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack in that one, I think.
Was he a fat bastard? Said Mr. Brownlines.
Well, Mr. Brown's nomination for the answer to this question, I think, was huge wangers, and Not Brown's was big cocks. So, and I happen to agree. I think those are both very important qualities in a man. I don't know. Like, cooking doesn't interest me. I can cook basics. I just choose not to because it's tedious and have way more interesting things to do with my time.
But you'd be willing to. That's the point, right? This guy wasn't even willing.
I'm not sure I'd be willing to, but
the difference between you and this guy I'm talking about is that he actively looked upon cooking to core as a belittling thing to engage in.
Well, I can see that. I mean, it used to be a hallmark of financial success, and so success as a man, that you had other people to do your cooking for you.
But he lived
a woman
completely alone.
Mm.
So it's not like he was providing for anyone else but his own base appetites.
He didn't need to. People provided for him. That's a sure sign that you've made it.
No, he hasn't, though, because he's missed out on a fundamental human skill. It's like outsourcing something basic about what it means to be human, and has been for thousands of years.
But we outsource all manner of pointless, redundant tasks.
But we shouldn't outsource some things.
But why should I not outsource cooking to a local Chinese person who cooks better than I do when I don't give a damn about cooking?
Look, it's not that you can't, but it's that, if I can't defend it in utilitarian terms. It's just I think every man should be able to cook at a basic level.
No, the man's job is to
here we go. The man's job is
to carve the meat that somebody else has, bought for him, because
not hunted.
The man ultimately doesn't really care too much about the quality of the meat. All he's concerned with is that there is meat on the plate, because men like meat. And so also the man's job is to barbecue things. Because I think it was Victoria Wood's skit, which she said that only men are capable of burning meat properly, which is true.
Properly,
yeah.
So burnt meat is good.
Yeah, well, no, it's an ironic comment, obviously, but no, cooking just doesn't interest me. Handshakes, I understand. I think the psychology behind wanting to see a firm handshake and what the firm handshake tells you about somebody else. The problem is that when you understand that about it, sort of on an abstract basis, it ceases to be important because you understand what's going on. Like, Donald Trump has famously got this incredibly firm handshake. Donald Trump uses his handshake to impress his dominance upon men that he's in the same room with, which, when you look at it on that abstract level, is kind of pathetic.
That's pathetic, but it's also, I know, I've got a particular man in mind. He lives in New Zealand. He comes to visit very occasionally. He's a good friend with my dad, and he's salt of the earth. And even though he knows me, every time I meet him, he puts out a firm handshake and looks me in the eye and smiles and he says, "Good to see you, mate. Good to see you." And it's the handshake. It's like a vice, but in advance it's going to be like a vice, so you respond with a vice. And there's this kind of warmth in the handshake. It's a surrogate hug. Do you know what I mean? It's a firm grip.
I don't think it's not a surrogate hug.
It is a surrogate hug. It's a mark of respect.
It does something. It's an entirely different sociological function to a hug. A hug is non-domineering even. A hug is something that you do with someone that you don't need to impress. A hug is something that you do when you simply want to show your like unalloyed affection to someone. A firm handshake is something you do when you want to tell somebody else something about you. It's a much more self-interested form of self-expression. And one of those things. So my answer to that question, by the way, I think the thing the quality I would most like in a man is femininity, and the quality I most like in a woman is masculinity, because I don't like this idea that men have to conform to it's the Andrew Tate model, where men have to conform to these incredibly boring, bland, cliche definitions of masculinity: strong handshakes, big biceps, a fairly callous disregard for the feelings of women generally, an ability just to be very callous and cruel and dismissive about people who are not socially domineering like you. I think that's kind of pathetic. In the same way as I think women who are sort of trad wives, I'm all for people having the ability to choose these things for themselves. But if your mark of success is so overtly gendered, then you're kind of limiting yourself. You're much less interesting to me if your mark of success is like, or your mark of masculinity is firm handshake, ability to twat someone in the face very hard if you need to, and other expressions of boring domination. Like I don't need to have a firm handshake to know that I'm more intelligent than Andrew Tate is, for example.
Just to be absolutely clear and unambiguous, I despise Andrew Tate for all of the reasons you've just said. I'm not saying that you have to have a firm handshake in order to be respected or respectable. But you know, the people whose handshakes are firm that I like, they have all these other qualities that endear me to them. You know, it's not just about the handshake. I would agree about the gender. I think I'm fairly in touch with my feminine side. We used to have Christmas parties at my house when I was younger, and I would spend 50% of the time, you know, gravitating towards the men who would, by and large, speak about football, which I've never really taken much of an interest in. But they would speak about other things, and then I'd think, I'd like to go and speak to the women now, because they're probably talking about their emotions, and I'm feeling emotional. I'll go, and you know, that sounds slightly reductive, but I would agree with you. Yeah, Christopher Hitchens' answer to this question, by the way, chat, was anima and animus, wasn't it? He thinks that a man should be in touch with his anima, that is the female principle, and a woman should be in touch with her animus. That's been taken rather literally in recent years, but
yeah, oh no, for all I'm in favor of men displaying feminine traits. I'm not in favor of eliminating the distinction between men and women.
Yes.
I don't think it's that easy to cross the divide.
Who's that other? Who's that Daily Wire guy, the older one?
Andrew Clave.
Andrew Klavan, yeah. Andrew Klavan said recently, every good story begins with the sentence, "There was a boy and there was a girl." And in that is so much, because you have to maintain the distinction between femininity and masculinity. All of life's interestingness is in those two, what would you call them? Forces, principles.
No. Kingsley Amis is much more interesting than that. All good stories begin with the words "a shot rang out." It doesn't matter whether necessarily whether the man shot or the woman shot. That becomes relevant later to the story, but the story is way more important than the sex. Or at least the more interesting part. It's also, I mean, I didn't want what I said to be interpreted as devaluing all traits that we traditionally consider to be masculine or feminine. I think, like you say, there is importance in the difference and in the distinction, and there are differences and distinctions. What I'm saying, though, is I don't think these should be seen to define a character.
Yeah.
They should be put in their proper place. They should be understood for what they are. And if their primary mode is to play up to a cliche, then they're tedious for that reason.
Well, there was that recent footage that emerged of Andrew Tate sitting shirtless in a random chair in a random room, smoking a cigar, listening to rap music. And this was meant to be the apogee of masculinity. And someone tweeted that video, and below it a picture from, say, the 1930s or something like that, black and white, of a little boy with his dad. His dad's got a beard and a pot belly, and the dad's holding up a fish his son has just caught in a rowing boat. And you know that dad is going to have a firm handshake, but you also know that he's not interested in, you know, looking like the stereotypical gym bro
the
male.
firm handshake should be a natural outgrowth of
exactly
natural
of your
strength.
virtues.
It shouldn't be something like Donald Trump uses, for example, to explicitly dominate the person you're with.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you there. Yeah.
I've actually lost track of even. Oh, the question was, what quality do you most like in a man?
Well, I think we've already answered question 13, then, which is well, actually, no. I think there's a lot to unpack in question 13, which is, what is the quality you most like in a woman? Obviously, if we were women, we would give different answers to this question, presumably. But as a man, I don't know. Do you want to go first on this?
Yeah, I'm the acknowledged expert in women. So no, I think I did sort of encompass it in the answer to the last question. I think I prefer women who are in touch with their sort of the slightly more masculine side in terms of sense of humor, interests, and to a degree mannerisms as well. Traditional femininity doesn't really interest me any more than traditional masculinity does. I find that that's sort of reductionist and makes for kind of boredom, really. So yeah, girls who like games and films and can tell jokes and take jokes, and are not overly prissy when it comes to ribbing on each other. Then I said ribbing as opposed to anything else. Then that's fine and enjoyable and great fun, and that's the quality I look for in a woman is like, can she be my best friend as much as any guy can? That's what makes her interesting.
I suppose it would be rather boring and almost a given to go through physical qualities, so I won't. But I will say sense of humor.
Yeah.
The women I most like spending time with have a wicked sense of humor, and that stems from my grandmother, God rest her soul, to women in whom I
have been.
Shut up. Yeah, so we'll leave that there then. Right, moving on to question 14. Which words or phrases do you most overuse?
Oh, this is actually quite an easy one, I think, because everyone has those. There's a term in, I think it might be a doctrine of linguistics about the filler words that everybody sort of uses when they are sort of trying. I just did one, sort of. Sort of is one of the ones I always overuse.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure chat could fill us in on this one.
Yeah, sort of, kind of. Lots of people use like. I try and avoid like as far as
because
possible.
You're not a Californian schoolgirl.
It's not just Californian schools. I mean, it's predominant. It's everywhere. I sort of learned from the Christopher Hitchens school, which is that you use the as a filler in sentences, and as long as you're aware that you're doing that, it's a way of telling people you haven't finished. It's a way, perversely, having said all of the stuff about sort of cringy masculinity, it is a kind of it is a way of setting a kind of dominance in conversation, which is that you are the one speaking, even when you're not speaking words, you are still in control of the conversation and the dialogue. So the is a very useful tool, but it is a tool. It can be overused. But my tics tend to be kind of, maybe, sometimes like, and
Okay. Before I give my answer to that question, I feel as though we maybe ought to circle back on the woman question, because Princess Fiona, who is one of the few women listening, or certainly one of the few women in the chat, you guys really brushed over the woman question. I wonder if that's what they mean by patriarchy. I don't know to what extent. That is meant humorously or
it's humorously.
Ironically.
Fiona is good. Fiona is one of the good women.
Don't say that.
No, she knows I think that.
Do you think we should say? Is there more to say there?
I don't know. Maybe it is. No, because I think we did cover a lot of the femininity side in the answer to the masculinity question. It might be telling that we had less to say about women. I don't think that's necessarily patriarchal.
I'll just speak my mind then on the women question.
That's a good start.
I don't like promiscuous women. I like women who do, in fact, evince and believe in certain traditional values of femininity. Yeah. Sense of humor we've covered. I don't know where it would be cliche to say women are a mystery to me, but then again, are men a mystery to women? I'm sure we are.
Yeah, there's always that element of mystery. That's what keeps people titillated, but it's also what makes the other sex in some profound ways unfathomable.
I think care. I think women are really good at care. I mean, it sounds anti-feminist to say that kind of a thing. I don't think we're in a particularly feminist audience at the moment, but
it's YouTube. It's 90% men.
Yeah. I mean, the women I most admire in my own life are my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, and my women friends, who are all caring, and they know how to make a man feel good about himself when he needs to feel better about himself. They know exactly what to say and do. I value that in a woman. the ability to, this sort of supernatural ability almost to know exactly how to comfort you in a way that men can't quite. The Mary figure, really, speaking as a Christian.
Generally higher regard for social graces and niceties.
Yes.
Which I think is important. But no, I do think that was partially covered under the answer to the men question, which
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
you know, if you say that you value, as I did, that you value femininity in men and masculinity in women, that sort of entails, I said sort of again, oh no, that question's made me really self-aware. You do, however, admit that there are certain innate qualities to femaleness which are very valuable. You can't necessarily identify them. I don't think they are quite as overt and reducible as men's traditional qualities are. But yeah, I think I've run out of things to say about women.
Yeah, we can move on from that now. I just didn't want to disappoint. I couldn't tell if she was being inane. You know, you don't want to be unchivalrous.
No.
So, well, I had to answer. Which words or phrases do you most overuse? I think it's as it were.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't know if I've used it that much in the stream yet. In my videos, I do sometimes, I think, but in conversation, I'll say, you know, blah, blah, as it were, or so to speak. So
As
to
a
speak,
Christian.
as a Christian, yeah. No, but I think this question is a bit of a dud one, actually. I think it's not really for me to. It's for other people to say it of someone, isn't it? Because people tend to go, "Oh, you say that a lot," but you don't tend to pick up on it yourself.
No, true.
So, question 12. No, we've been there, done that. Question 15. What or who is the greatest love of your life? Oh shit. Proust really knew how to get in there, didn't he?
I tend to find what's more interesting than who's, and also less embarrassing. So what would probably be? I mean, is it too broad an answer to say books? It's the English language. I'll go with that.
Suitably deflected. Well done.
Yes.
Well, it depends what you mean by love, doesn't it? The English language, ironically, given what you've just said, is famously deficient in the language of love. Not in its poetry or anything, but in its lexicon. We have one word for it. The Greeks have about 6 or 7. Erotically, is not for you to hear, chat. But what were the other Greek terms they had? Oh God, and there's agape, unconditional love, the Christian
loves,
form.
The 3 gods of this: Hymeros, Eros,
Philippos,
Phobos,
something like that.
And then the modes of love. I don't remember those. Agapes, Eros, and I don't remember the third. But
begins with PH, I think.
Well, it tracks the 3 gods, I assume, and Phobos is one of them.
Right.
I think, anyway.
Phobos, what a name. I'm going to call my son Phobos.
But then there isn't a I don't think there's a Hymeros, but the god is Hymeros, I think. Yeah, I'd have to go back and reread Hesiod. That's one of the most pretentious sentences I've ever used on a stream.
Well, I will say that certainly one of the greatest loves of my life is you, Little Platoon.
Likewise.
Because you were too demure and red-cheeked to say me. I'm assuming you were going to, but yeah, we'll move on.
I'm wearing a red jumper. That's the only reason.
We'll move on. Question 16. When and where were you happiest? You don't have to answer first, by the way.
No, it's your turn.
It's my okay. Well, I shouldn't have said that. When and where were you happiest? I can tell you exactly when and where I was happiest. Well, I suppose I have to say now, don't I? No, it was several years ago. For those who are not aware, the Little Platoon and I went to university together where we studied philosophy, which is why Ben just said the pretentious things about the Greeks that he did. And we were sitting under the bough of a big oak tree in Hyde Park, drinking wine and quoting Keats to each other. And then we challenged each other, or rather I challenged Ben and he groaned and then he relented and we did the challenge. We challenged each other to writing a sonnet in something like 10 minutes flat about the moment, which is what Keats famously did with a friend of his I came up with something about a grasshopper. There you go. Yeah, and that was a good day. The sun was shining, the wine was flowing, we were smoking cigarettes then. I miss those.
Yes.
So very much. Yeah, that's it's one of the earlier questions, that what do I do with perfect happiness? Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. I have other answers to that question, but given that you're here, it seems only fitting to
Oh yeah, make me blush. No, I don't. I would probably share the answer. Yeah, the past is a good place. I'm quite happy there, and no, I'd probably I'd repeat the answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm very flattered. Right, you can take over as quizmaster for 5 minutes.
Goodo. Question 17. Which talent would you most like to have?
Oh God. Actually, I was thinking about this yesterday. I can tell you it would be the talent to remember. Oh, no, I'm just going to interrupt. Nikki Relihan has said that was actually really nice. No sarcasm. Thank you, Nikki. I meant it. Mr. Brown has said my raving days.
Mr. Brown, I have on good authority, was a very good raver at the time. Yes.
You know him better than I do.
I do.
Yes. It's good to have you here, though, Mr. Brown. Thank you for showing up. No, what's the question? Too much wine has been had.
The question was, which talent would you most like to have?
The ability to remember everything I read.
Yeah, photographic memory would be fun.
Yeah, the ability to recall facts, figures, statistics, quotations at will from everything that you've read in your life.
Mm-hmm. That's handy.
Or, wings, the ability to fly, but it doesn't quite say superpower, this question, so.
No, the question, it's what, it's talent or ability, isn't it, the question?
Which talent would you most like to have?
Flying is a talent, but
That's why it says, you could be a talented flyer.
Oh, what was the Douglas Adams thing? The tricks of flying is throwing yourself off a full building and forgetting how to fall or something, I think it goes.
Or Buzz Lightyear falling with style.
Falling with style. Yeah.
Buzz Lightyear to the rescue.
I don't know. I tend to just think...
Because you've already got the talent that I just said I wanted.
You're too kind.
Jammy bugger.
Yeah, don't get me reciting poetry on stream. Which talent would I most like to have? I don't know. At the moment... Because I'm already learning these things, though, so I'm on my way to having them. So I misspent youth learning the wrong musical instruments. I should have spent my time learning piano and guitar because they're actually useful, and instead spent all of my childhood learning trumpet.
And the triangle.
Never learned the triangle, but I've got rhythm, so I don't need to learn that one. It's kind of hard to play the triangle wrong, I think. So yeah, playing guitar would be good. I think singing I can mostly do. So guitar playing would be fun.
Jared's just said, "Do not quote the new Peter Pan at me, LP." What have you said? That's a quote.
No, nothing yet. Nothing yet. Yeah.
I do believe in fairies. I do.
But that's not in it. It's not in the film.
Is it not?
No, they got rid of it. None of the only one of the most important quotes is actually in the film, and that is, "To die would be an awfully big adventure." But they misuse it.
Well, that's a good quote.
It is, but it's way better in every other version than this. This version would be, to
sleep.
Well, because in Barry's original, and I think that line I don't think actually does appear in the 53 film, though, which is interesting because that is otherwise sort of the high mark of Peter Pan on the film. But it does lose the most meaningful line. But in the play and in the 2003 film as well, which was slightly more accurate to that, to die would be an awfully big adventure is used. In the novelization that Barry wrote of the play afterwards, that's specifically because it's Peter's first moment of self-sacrifice. It's important. It's an important line. He's finally found somebody he thinks he might be prepared to sacrifice himself for. So he gives up his life in his own mind to save Wendy. And he's not too scared of death because he doesn't really know fear, but he has the first pangs in his life of what might be called fear. But then he sort of comes back from that with, "To die would be an awfully big adventure." But the novel closes with the inversion of that line, which is that because he is eternally a child, he never really develops beyond that half realization. And so Barry writes for the narrator of the play, "To live would be an awfully big adventure," because Peter Pan will never really know how to live because he is just eternally a child and eternally a boy. And it's a good sort of duopoly in terms of line and meaning and import. But yeah, the 2023 film doesn't understand the meaning of the first one and doesn't bother to use the second one. So having been asked not to quote Peter Pan, I just did.
At length.
At length.
Where were we then? Which question
We
were
were
we
on talent you would most like to have.
Yes, I think. Have you answered that satisfactorily?
I don't know if satisfactorily, but the ability to answer questions in less than 5 paragraphs would be a useful talent to have, I guess. But no, boringly, play guitar better, I think.
Well, we can move on from that one then. 18. Question 18. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? Some of these questions are suspiciously similar to the last ones, Proust. I don't know. God. One thing about myself.
In this precise moment, I'd like to be able to answer that question, but I can't. So
I think I'm going to have to admit defeat there. That seems like it's not that it's not a good question. It's just that, like I told you earlier, Ben, we ought to think about our answers to this question for the purposes of the efficiency of the stream.
Temporarily boring answer. Sing better.
Sing better. Well, should we sing now?
No.
All right, I'll go with that one then. Question 19. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
This is surviving my mother. Love you, Mum. I don't.
She's not listening to State of Disunion on a channel with 2,000 subscribers.
Somehow contriving to get 100,000 subscribers in a year of starting a YouTube channel probably is actually, that was surprising. I still think it's a bit of a myth, though. I don't really believe that it's happened. So it would be between that, also writing a 600-page book on a typewriter in the space of 6 months. That was fun. So between those two things, being self-employed.
My greatest achievement. I don't know how to answer that without sounding incredibly arrogant, but probably just having written, in my own estimation, about 2 of the hundreds I've written, but have not ended up liking, 2 decent poems, which I'm still working on 7 years after the fact. Yeah, no, that's a difficult question to answer. Question 20.
So you're just not gonna. Okay, no, I see how this works.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, this channel, Oski, is an achievement. I mean, it's the growth. Thanks in part to your publicity, your PR. I'm proud of this channel. It began as Cuthbert Conker. You strongly advised I change the name because it sounded much too twee.
Changing the name was a great achievement.
It was a good. It was a good decision. Someone recently thought I was Turkish, because Oski apparently sounds Turkish. I'm not Turkish, as you could probably gathered. No, I'm proud of Oski. I hope it continues to grow, and I'm obviously grateful for everyone listening. But no, I think we can move on to question 20, which is, if you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be?
Or a thing. Just anything.
Like a rock, maybe.
Oh, that would be tedious, though.
They did that in Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I reviewed negatively. They came back as rocks in some future scenario.
One of the things I like about Hinduism and reincarnation is that I don't believe it. I think it's all nonsense, but at least it's entertaining to imagine that some poor person can, through sort of mistakes and happenstance, come back as a worm.
Why would you want to come back?
Well, I wouldn't want to, but that's what I like about reincarnation.
Oh,
is
okay.
That other people can come back as really embarrassing things. Yes. You might be reincarnated as a dildo or something, and that would be embarrassing. But as long as it's not me, it'll be fine.
The ridiculous can come back as the vermicular.
Yeah. I'm trying. What would I want to come back as? A god? Would that satisfy the answer to the question? That would be fun. Yeah. I have no really profound answer to that one. It's not the kind of question I usually find myself asking.
Realistic Delinquent has said a royal not called Harry.
Well, yes, any of the royals not called Harry, or maybe Prince Andrew would be not ideal either.
I think for me it would be it would either be a blue whale or an eagle,
hunted by the Japanese or hunted by American farmers.
Do American farmers go out of their way to kill eagles?
birds of prey are always the victims of farmers because birds of prey steal the young livestock. Then again, Americans idolize the eagle because it's the national symbol.
Yeah,
so
you can't. I think it might even be illegal in America to kill bald eagles.
it's illegal to do lots of things in this country that people somehow find a way to do.
Yeah, like murder. You should see the number of heads I've got in my freezer.
Well, it is supposedly illegal to kill swans, isn't it? But there's a large Polish community in my hometown. And in Poland, it's kind of traditional that you are allowed to kill and eat game birds like that. So, despite it being illegal, it's not unheard of that you'll see this swan's head sticking out of a plastic bag as a Polish person walks away from the river.
Jesus.
It happens sometimes.
Crown property.
Well,
that should be an offence to get you kicked out of the country.
It's a very nationally specific thing. Most countries in the world don't understand, I think for probably quite sensible reasons, why the British seem to think that swans particularly are covered by a royal guarantee of safety.
There is some random law on the statute books in this country that says something like you can't slap a Romanian with a trout after 11 p.m. in the month of May.
Yeah, it's illegal to behave suspiciously with a salmon. I think is actually a rule on the book.
Tomorrow I'm going to buy a salmon and behave suspiciously with it.
I love the idea that the law doesn't define what behaving suspiciously with a salmon is.
Yeah.
So I don't know what.
It's a given. There was once this great upsurge of people behaving suspiciously with salmons.
Like, is it simply as something as mundane as cooking it with improbable ingredients, or is it something truly weird that you're doing with the salmon?
Oh, well, let's not go there.
Are you doing something Japanese with the salmon?
Or northern? Well, what question was that? If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be?
I don't know how we got into behaving suspiciously.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to say whale, blue whale.
Blue whale.
Yeah.
That was it.
I'd love to explore the depths of the ocean as the biggest animal that's ever lived that we know of. Yeah.
Question 21 is, where would you most like to live?
Rural England in a thatched cottage with a huge garden and vegetable patch surrounded by fields. There, done, easy.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Similar, I think, smaller house, probably cottage, ideally on a river. And if not on a river, then a house overlooking the sea. It would have to be by the water of some description. And it would have to be sort of private access to water as well. So not like a family beach, because I don't want to have to be dealing with children. Nice, quiet, out of the way. There's a couple of places in the village next to mine which I really want to own, but none of them are for sale. So that's tough. But rural England. If it's not this country though, to sort of branch it out, I would like to live in any American state which doesn't have income tax. That would be a good start.
Texas, Nebraska,
Florida would be fun.
Florida.
Also,
Wyoming.
I like alligators, and Florida has lots of those. But
you like alligators?
Yeah, alligators.
What have they ever done for you?
They are amazing creatures. They're really old and they don't change and they're vicious, but you can just about avoid them if you know what you're doing.
So you like them? What? They would eat you if they could.
I know they would if they could, but they can't because I know what I'm doing.
Because you're
here. They're cool creatures. Like sharks are really cool creatures because they're so old and they've been around for such a long time, and they haven't really needed to evolve because they're so good at what they do.
Princess Fiona has said here, every state has federal income tax.
Oh, federal income tax is different than state income tax, though. So yeah, right. the federal government knows no bounds, unfortunately. So it will impose a federal income tax over and above state income taxes, but many states also levy their own state income tax. And states which don't do that tend to be of the opinion that you shouldn't be having any income tax at all. And that includes the imposition of the federal government, though they're not really at liberty to disagree with it. But I'd rather live in a state which at least hates imposing a tax than one which does it with glee and abandon.
If the avatar of Princess Fiona is in fact Princess Fiona, I'd be quite happy to live in whichever state she's in.
There you go, Princess. You've got a fan.
Yeah, we'll leave that there. I could live in America.
For other reasons, I would like to live in America and probably the South. And it would be Texas or Florida, probably, maybe Tennessee, somewhere like that, but not somewhere that thinks that the highest goal in life is to become more European, because the Europeans are not anyone's. I don't think anyway Europeans are a race or a culture to be idolized anymore.
Only in retrospect or in nostalgia.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that covers that question.
Yeah.
I'm sure I had another answer to that. I could live on a boat if I didn't have any. See
I've been there and done it. It's
the bucolic sort of cottage in the countryside. That would be, you know, if I had a family and a dog and, you know, 6 children or something and a church nearby. If I didn't have any of that and I was a free sort of, well, not free spirit, but sort of bachelor still, I would happily live on a barge, sailing the high seas. I work on barges.
I lived on a boat. I've only recently handed it over to be sold. But the thing, it's different at sea, because at sea you don't have to worry too much about where your shit's going, because you are allowed to dump it. But if you live on the inland waterways in a canal boat, narrow boat, whatever, the thing they never tell you before you buy it is that, yeah, you will spend a long time sort of walking along the canal with canisters full of your own shit, which is not fun. I still miss it. It was really lovely, but yeah, it's not as idyllic as it sounds.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've spent enough time with you on your various boats to know that it's not as idyllic as it sounds.
Like in a house or on a boat at sea, you never have to hear the phrase, "I'm afraid the toilet is full."
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I reckon we power through, because we're not actually that far short of the end of the quiz, are we? So we're now on to 23, which is, what do you regard as the lowest depth of misery?
No, we've missed 22.
No, 20. Oh, treasured possession. Oh,
What is your most treasured possession?
Oh.
Possession implies something non-animate, so I can't say my dog. Probably. Actually, I do have a most treasured possession, but I'm not sure. Am I allowed to say this? It's a little mahogany carved figurine of an African slave child. And I think my dad got it in Africa when he was doing some work out in South Africa. I have no idea of its patrimony, history, whatever, who carved it, what its meaning is. But it's this little boy, tiny little figurine, but it speaks so much emotional volume, and it's a beautiful object. And I love it, and for some reason I've always loved it, and I've always said to my mother, if there was ever a house fire, I don't live with my mother anymore, but if there was ever a house fire, I would save that figurine first before my family. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't really have many treasured possessions. I like my typewriter.
I like yours typewriter. More. Well, I have a lovely typewriter.
I know.
It just appeared in my house one day.
Yeah, mysteriously.
Remington. Yeah. It could have been owned by George Orwell, by the way.
But I lost because my first boat caught fire, burned down, and sank, and I lost everything I owned on that. So my previous answer would probably have been sort of old notebooks and things that I did writing in for years, but they all burned, so I don't own them anymore. So yeah, I would guess, yeah, probably the typewriter is the thing that I kind of look at and think, as a physical object, that is something I have some sort of affection for. Otherwise, I'm kind of transient. I'm not too attached to possessions.
No, you're not. You're sort of Christian in that way, or Stoic. You know, you're philosophical about it. You're like me. You don't ultimately care too much about what's around you. You cling to these particulars, and that's all that matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of like my guitars, though. But yeah, otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be it.
Question 23. What do you regard as the lowest depth of misery? That to me is easy. Loss, grief.
Oh.
That not much more to say about that. The loss of dogs, loved ones, family members. Also loneliness. True loneliness, profound loneliness. I think we've all experienced that at some point in our lives, and that's pretty awful. Because if you're lonely, I mean, to whom, at least in grief, you tend to have other people with whom you can grieve. But being genuinely, profoundly, ontologically lonely is a horrible state of being. So yeah, those two things would be my answers.
Good answers. Last orders. That's always a miserable experience.
Steve Cossaboom said, losing erections for no reason.
Losing erections for no reason.
When you really want them to go up. It's like in between his work, damn you, slapping.
I'm told that's a pitfall of age, so I'm sorry for you, but we'll all reach that point eventually. That's the Biden doctrine, isn't it? Boners are rare. Make use of them.
The Moldonian, who is my dad, has just tuned in to say, it's your mum's, return it now. referring to the statue I was talking about, the mahogany carved statue. If you're still listening, Dad, don't worry. It's not actually in the house. It's at your house. You can find it. It's in the living room.
He does have your pen, though.
I do have your pen. I accidentally stole. I will return it tomorrow. You can, by the way, Dad, donate through a thing called Super Chats. If that's
you're trying to extort money live on stream from your dad. Talk about the lowest depth of misery.
Is that one of the questions?
That's the question.
What's the worst thing you've ever done?
The question we're on.
You finish.
Lowest depth of misery. I don't know. No, I probably would agree with you. I think yeah, you covered most of the bases. Yeah. Loss and grief are pretty bad things. Then again, they have their own upsides. I'm trying to think what is a really. It's sort of pathetic boredom, I think, is the lowest depth of misery. My most unhappy experience probably ever, and that exceeds the loss of my great granddad, for example, was being asked. I worked on a building site for a while. I know, with this accent, and
I bet you were bullied.
No, because I grew up with them, so it was all fine. They knew what I was like. But I was tasked at one point with sweeping up the building site while the building was going on, and it was so mind-numbingly pointless that I was literally bored to tears. It's like the most fruitless job you could possibly imagine, and it's like I'm spending my time sweeping up dust while someone above me is literally sawing a piece of wood to put more dust on the floor. That is such a I suddenly thought, you know what, I could be doing literally anything else, so I did. But yeah, I guess uselessness then in that sense, or like a lack of purpose or a lack of point is a low. I like having something to do.
Yeah.
So the absence of that is a fairly low depth of misery. Question 24: what is your favorite occupation?
What does the questionnaire mean by occupation?
It doesn't say. There's no asterisk, so you're going to have to assume.
So it could.
I would guess occupation is use of your time. I would guess.
I would guess so. Yeah. Writing.
Mm-hmm.
Or talking, actually.
Yeah.
So everyone has conversations with lots of people all the time. There are very few people in the world with whom I would jump at the chance to have a conversation. You're one of them, because it feels genuinely productive. Otherwise, writing, in the morning with a coffee, or in the evening with a glass of whiskey or wine, sitting down with a pen and a blank sheet of paper and letting my imagination run riot. That's my greatest pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
my favorite occupation.
Broadly agree with that, and also reading. I think someone in chat actually has asked if I read Charles C.W. Cook. I know the name. I think he writes for National Review, and in which case, yes, I do read him. But that ties into my answer, which is probably as much as writing things and speaking. Not that you're told, given that we've been talking for the last almost 2 hours, but no, reading, and particularly sort of current events. I like knowing things, and I like having recourse to knowledge and the like.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah. Well, that covers that then.
It does, doesn't it?
Question 25. What is your most marked characteristic? Again, there's no asterisks of what physical, emotional, behavioral.
That's one of those I think is probably best for other people to answer, but I would say probably my accent.
Do you think?
Well, in the sense that the marked characteristic is being marked by somebody else, and the most people able to mark me with a characteristic are people who listen to me on YouTube. So what's the most notable thing about the way I speak, really, which is probably the accent?
Yeah, I mean, again, for the benefit of the chat, I used to work with Ben here at an escape room, which I'm sure you've heard of by now, in London. And he would give his introduction, welcome to escape rooms. We're going to lock you in a room. This will happen. That will happen. And without fail, every time he would say, do you have any questions? Someone would raise their hand and say, did you go to Oxford? And of course, he didn't go to Oxford. He went to what is compared to Oxford, a polytechnic, and he went to that polytechnic with me. But no, he didn't go to Oxford. He's just a posh twat.
Guilty as charged.
As for mine, I suppose it would be the same thing. I wear 3-piece tweed suits because why not? I spend half of my week covered in linseed oil, paint, tallow, grease.
And that's just a kink.
That's just a kink, yeah. And all the other effluvium of my work, which is working on barges. So I like to dress nicely when I'm not doing that, for very many reasons. So yeah, I think that's a marked characteristic. Also my moustache, which I don't currently have right now, so my avatar is sort of telling a lie. I have a short beard.
Yeah, he did used to look like a disgraced geography teacher, but now is slightly more presentable, even if he does wear three-piece tweed suits in his own garden.
Yeah, why not?
Well, yeah.
26. Question 26. What do you most value in your friends? Well, for me, that's easy. Love and loyalty.
Oh, no, yeah, those are both very good. Love, loyalty, integrity, honesty, creativity, I think, and humor.
Yeah, what he said.
Hmm.
Yeah, that covers that.
Agreeing with me is also a very valuable thing I look for in my friends.
Question 27. Oh god.
Settle down, chat. We're going to be here for the next 3 hours.
I hope
Who are
that
your favorite writers?
Pour a glass of wine or whiskey. We're going to be here for a while. Who are your favorite writers? Okay, I'm going to list a few.
Okay.
Herman Melville, Cormac McCarthy,
Mm-hmm.
William Shakespeare, Mervyn Peake, Thomas Sowell, Martin Amis, Christopher Hitchens. What?
No, just laughing at the long and ever-growing list.
Oh yeah. Thomas Carlyle, Charles Dickens. I mean, where do you stop?
Evidently, you don't.
You don't. So I can
just carry on going.
Clive James.
I'm trying to think who I'm going to be left with after this exhaustive list. I probably wouldn't, like Thomas Sowell you mentioned, and I value Thomas Sowell immensely. I probably wouldn't value him as a writer too much. He's very clear and concise, and speaks with admirable clarity. I don't really consider him a writer though. But then again, it's kind of interesting to interrogate why that is, because what ultimately is the point of writing if it's not the conveyance of ideas clearly, or thoughts and beliefs clearly? And he's very good at that. But I think, I consider him more, I think he uses writing to convey his main purpose as opposed to writing being a purpose. So Martin Amis will speak in interviews, or used to speak in interviews before he carked it, about valuing prose for its own sake against things which he dismissively referred to, things like actually storytelling was one of them, and characterization. I think he was being semi-ironic with that, but it's to the extent one has a problem with Martin Amis, it was the fact that he was so brilliant at prose, but he did seem to think that it stood at a contradistinction with things like storytelling and characterization, which is I would consider to be at least as important. Martin Amis, though, is one of my earliest sort of formative influences, and so still value him for that. Though I think Kingsley Amis was a far better storyteller, and someone I'd much rather read, really. I probably learn more from Martin Amis, but I enjoy Kingsley Amis much more. For a good sort of example of their difference in approach, you can read the alteration versus the information. And I like both of them, but I like the alteration for the story it's telling, and I like the information because of the language used, and that's a very different sort of mode of consumption. Of people you haven't listed, I mean, Christopher Hitchens would be one of the earliest influences. Mary Reynolds, Gore Vidal. Oh, you've listed so many of the ones that I like.
I know, yes.
It
might be easier.
Evelyn Waugh. You didn't mention Evelyn Waugh.
Oh God, Evelyn Waugh, Woodhouse.
P.G. Woodhouse, yeah. Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde. Well, not so much Oscar Wilde anymore. I admire Oscar Wilde for being a rather Nietzschean sort of individualistic individual, if I can put it that way. Evelyn Waugh for prose style, absolutely. Realistic Delinquent. I can't believe I'm admitting this on live stream. I haven't actually read any Tolstoy. It's on my list. It's on my list. But Evelyn Waugh, completely. But I was going to say it might be easier rather than say, what writers do you like? I know that's the question, but surely, who your favorite writers are is determined by how they write and what kind of prose style you tend to gravitate towards. I mean, I've said in previous Substack posts and I think previous videos that I tend to like the more is more school. I like purple writers. I like writers who experiment in the use of language and really sort of go all out there, which is, kind of fitting given that this is the Proust Questionnaire, because Proust was an incredibly purple writer, I suppose you could say. Depending on, he's more purple in English under the prevailing translation than he was in French. But yeah, and I don't like Hemingway, for instance. I've read his stuff and I can see the talent, but I don't thrill to that kind of writing. I like Mervyn Peake and people like that, people who take the English language to its utmost poetic limits and really make a song and dance about it.
I don't know, because I like some very functional writers. Chat's coming up with some other brilliant suggestions as well: Kafka, Tolstoy, Walt Whitman, because we're sort of sticking with novelists here, but if you're including poets, then A. Housman, Bosie, H.P. Lovecraft for another novelist. But I like some writers who are very, very formulaic with their prose. I think Michael Crichton was a genius storyteller.
Terrible writer,
but not a good writer. No, he's what
Yeah.
I think you'd call a concept writer.
Yeah,
He doesn't
ideas
really.
man.
Yeah, you can take any of the characters from any of his books and swap them around, and they wouldn't really change. But the genius thing Michael Crichton did was, and the reason everyone wants to turn the page of the Andromeda Strain or Jurassic Park or the Sphere or any of these other things, is that he presents these ideas in such, it's workman-like prose, but it's uniformly understandable and universally understandable for that reason. And you don't get distracted by his artistic gifts, which can happen. It's what Martin Amis sort of relied on, which is that people fall so in love with the way he used language that they didn't really pay attention to the fact that money and the information are literally the same story.
Yeah.
With the same characters. So yeah, Michael Crichton as a very sort of perfunctory and prosaic prose stylist is a good example. There are others as well. I mean, George Orwell's not a great prose stylist, I don't think.
Oh, I beg to differ. I think he was one of the great prose stylists of the 20th century.
In non-fiction, I would agree. I don't think in fiction necessarily. I mean, the thing that stands out about 1984 isn't how brilliantly it's written. It's how brilliantly it conveys
an idea,
what he wants it to.
Yeah.
He's sort of more of a Michael Crichton school in terms of prose style.
Yeah.
Aldous Huxley, Brave New World is one of the most, I think it's the shortest collection of sentences you'll ever read. It's a really short book, but it packs so much into that. And again, the interest is all in the world he's depicting, the ideas he's conveying, the arguments he's making implicitly, and you sort of overlook the fact that every sentence lasts for about 6 words, and there's never a word there that you think is particularly beautiful.
Someone here has suggested Tolkien. I'm willing to. Okay, I will put Tolkien into my list, but the thing with Tolkien is your ability to read him is very much dependent on your tolerance for endless Saxon words, like his complete shying away from, almost fear of longer, somewhat Latinate sentences. He wouldn't allow, and that's part of the mythology as well. If you read Tolkien's letters to his, particularly Christopher Tolkien, if you read his private correspondence, he's very much more free. He's free to express himself in any mode that he sees fit. But in the Lord of the Rings, he's explicitly invoking the Saxon heritage. He's using short, sharp words. He doesn't even like the use of the word island. There's no such thing as an island in Tolkien's mythos. It's islet or something like that. Yeah, it depends on prose style. I like Nabokov, for instance. Nabokov is one of my favorite writers.
Yeah,
I've never been quite sure how to pronounce that, either Nabokov, but I like him. My tastes run to the purple.
I think so. I mean, Evil in War would be the person I really hold above all the rest of them. I think because it is the perfect synthesis of all the disparate things we've described in other writers. Has the ability to be long and purple, but never self-indulgently, and always with a view to sort of the ironic contrast. So Evil in War will never, or very rarely at least, will use a long sentence with multiple semicolons without following it with an incredibly short, sharp, and to the point, usually comedic beat that follows it. Of lesser known writers, though, people who are not already established as real classics, they tend to sort of be heavily influenced by the others. But I think Lynn Llewellyn, who wrote a series of books called Night Runner, it's not high literature, but it's really brilliant in terms of sort of imagination and the world that she builds. And likewise, who did Mortal Engines, the Hungry Cities books? There's 4 of them, and then there's the Fever Chrome ones. That was his name's gone. That's really annoying. But those are, again, they're not high literature. They're not brilliant works that will stand as English classics forevermore. But I think they're really good examples of what you do and what you can create if you're not very obsessed with charting some new path through the English canon.
Yeah.
And being not quite unashamedly influenced by better writers than you, but you're allowed then to really explore the fullness of your ideas and create these really charming worlds. And really just in many senses, the difference between these people is simply renown. Some of these people in different lives would be more renowned than they currently are. But yeah, if you're looking for people who are not already established as part of the English canon, I'd recommend sort of that category, that tier of writer. People who are very, very interested in the worlds they're building, the mythology they're building, and less so on the sort of their own reputation and trying to be seen as the next best thing, which I think Martin Amis kind of was obsessed by for a time. So that might be a fault with him. But
let's not speak ill of the dead, Ben.
But it's so fun. Martin Amis did it all the time. Like,
he did, yeah. Christopher did too. Question 28.
Sorry, just very quickly. Not Brown answered my question. Philip Reeve wrote Mortal Engines, and yeah,
there we go. Philip Reeve, yeah.
Which is weird because most of the rest of his stuff is really, really childish, and it is literally children's books. And Mortal Engines sort of straddles the divide. But having really enjoyed Mortal Engines when I was growing up, and I still enjoy it today, I went to read some of his other stuff and found it was just so childish I didn't really get on with it. But in those books, he's very clearly influenced by Evil in War as well. There's even a chapter title of one of the later Mortal Engines books, which is one of Evil in War's short stories. So he's obviously quite well read and well versed in his own sort of stylistic influences. That was Love Among the Ruins, I think is one of the chapter titles, in a book called The Darkling Plane, which is borrowed from T.S. Eliot. So he's a literate children's writer. Philip Pullman, why didn't I mention him? Another really good example of someone who is, I think, quite a good prose stylist, but again, primarily an ideas man, and someone not afraid to, someone not so obsessed with being a good writer that he can't have good ideas, and someone not so obsessed with good ideas that he forgets how to write them. Philip Pullman's a formative influence, much like the others we've mentioned.
Yes, you've often cited the first sort of page or two of
the Amber Spyglass.
The Amber Spyglass as one of your models.
Valley shaded by rhododendrons, etc.
Yeah. Right. Question 28. Who is your hero of fiction?
Hero of fiction? Ooh. This might be a slightly cheaty answer, but I would probably say Alexander in Mary Reynolds' trilogy, because he actually conceived of himself as a hero. But then again, I mean, a more familiar answer, they're familiar for a reason. People like, Luke Skywalker, Frodo, or they think Sam is more heroic. Yeah. But no, my left field answer will be Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Yours?
God, this is, I'm afraid, the sort of question I'd need to really go away and consider. But Samwise Gamgee occurs to me first and foremost. Yeah, he carries Frodo the whole way there. Frodo's a little bitch. I mean, he's
he does whine a bit.
He whines and he whinges, and
but he has a grey burden, so we can forgive him that.
A great burden.
Yeah, burden.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's with a D.
Yeah. No, I thought you said grey burden.
Grey burden.
Yeah, and I thought Gandalf.
Grey burden is age.
Is he the
I
burden?
think. No. Sam is heroic in the sense of self-sacrifice, but unassuming self-sacrifice. He's not really cast as the hero of the tale, and that, in a way, makes him more heroic, I think.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
No, that's one of those questions I need to go away and consider. Which, again, if we ignored your advice,
learn way more about a person about their spontaneous answers.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I just
that's
gave
true.
You one.
That's true. Hero fiction. What fiction have I been reading? Blah blah blah. No, can't think of any. Samwise Gamgee. I'll go with that. Yeah, if I change my mind, I'll stick a comment in the pin. Question 29. Which historical figure do you most identify with?
Oh God, I don't know.
That's a tough one. It's not which historical figure do you most sympathize with or like,
no,
but
it's identify with, which
with.
is see yourself in.
Exactly, yeah.
I genuinely, I don't think I can answer that question. I always go with sort of sympathize with, or people that I think I understand more, in which case it would be somebody like Evil in War, probably. But the claim of identity immediately sounds arrogant, because that means that I think I'm as good as Evil in War is, which I don't by any stretch of the imagination. I like his worldview and his approach to things. I think I understand it and I sympathize with it. And that's as close as I can get to identifying with it. So some sort of vaguely misandrist, cloistered old writer, which is
well, I have a firm answer to that question. C.S. Lewis.
Oh
yeah. C.S. Lewis was an atheist, then wasn't. so me, a writer, so me, a much better writer than me. He clearly had an impulse to write in different genres. I mean, I've tried my hand at fantasy and science fiction, and C.S. Lewis did both very successfully. Not many people are aware of it. Well, I say not many people. A lot of people who know C.S. Lewis only for the Narnia books don't know that he also wrote science fiction. I think it's something about space otters. Otters in space. Otters on Mars.
You've mentioned science fiction, and I now regret not having listed all the great sci-fi authors in the question about my favorite writers. That's by far the most interesting question. I'll have to call out Philip K. Dick. The list is extensive. Frank Herbert. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, just C.S. Lewis. Also Christian. Interested in. He likes talking and writing about Christian themes and literature. He wore tweed. He was somewhat, what's the word, bohemian in a way, kind of. There was a lovely anecdote I read about C.S. Lewis once, where the Inklings meetings they would have with, I think Arthur Dyson or someone Dyson, and Williams and Tolkien at his rooms in, I think, Magdalen College. The carpet would be covered. It would probably be a regal carpet, blue or red or something, but it was grey because of the absolute profusion of cigarette ash and pipe ash that C.S. Lewis would tap onto it over the years, and he maintained that cigarette ash and pipe ash was good for carpets. It cleaned them somehow, and he wouldn't let anyone clean it up. He used to drop his ash on the carpet, threatening the structural integrity of a 1,000-year-old college. It could burn to the ground.
You might be right. I think it is the case that on aeroplanes, the air used to be cleaner when they allowed people to smoke on board because they installed filtration and recycling systems. Whereas now it's just, well, we don't need to filter out, so it's just recycled air. So there are paradoxical truths about that. I wouldn't be surprised if the ash fortified the carpet.
Fortified, along with all the wine they were drinking. Yeah. So C.S. Lewis is my answer to that question. Moving on to question 30. Ben.
5 left. Oh my God, we're nearly there.
Who are you say that as though you've hated the whole experience.
No. I'm just surprised.
Thank God the end is in sight.
I assumed we'd have to split this into 2 streams, but we're actually quite near the end.
Yeah. Well,
favorite heroes in real life is question 30.
So is that, it doesn't specify if they have to be living or not. Real life is vague.
Ooh, yeah.
Who are heroes in real life? Well, that's come after or soon after the who are your fictional heroes. So I'm assuming they don't have to be living.
No.
Heroes in real life.
I try not to. I mean, it sounds sort of, I was about to say it sounds pretentious, as though nothing else we've said today sounds pretentious. Like I try and shy away from the hero impulse. That Christopher Hitchens' thing about being very, very skeptical of arguments from role models. I think if you require heroes to look up to show you the way, then there's probably some, at least slight lack in your own sort of self-worth and self-confidence. But there are people that you can look at and you can say, well, I think you either are heroic in your actions or else you display a mindset which I would consider to be heroic, and that's more interesting to me. So anyone who is prepared to stand up and speak what they conceive of the truth as being without regard to fear or favor. I think people like Thomas Sowell, for example, I would consider to be heroes because he is dedicated to what he believes that he has a means of deducing the truth. He has the proper regard for the things that constitute truth: facts, evidence, statistics, history, and he's prepared to say things which are very unpopular, and which will not earn him many friends because he believes them to be true. That's the quality that I most admire in anyone, no matter what their walk of life. It's what I admire about George Orwell as well. It's what I admire about people I don't necessarily agree with. I think there's like Glenn Greenwald, for example, the journalist. I think is probably wrong in many of his diagnoses, but his willingness to stand up for what he believes against some quite significant and dangerous opposition, because he lived in Brazil and the Bolsonaro government wasn't fond of him. His willingness to speak also to people that are not conventionally on his side. So he's a free thinker. He's someone who is not afraid as a left-wing person to go on Tucker Carlson's show because he believes that the audience is there and the audience needs to hear what he has to say. That personal courage, the ability to say that truth is more important than my own personal safety, is what I consider real heroism to be. And so though it might, create a list of names which isn't always obvious, often sort of writers and academics who are prepared to sacrifice their own careers to say unpalatable but truthful things. That would be the standard I hold to. So yeah, people like Thomas Sowell, people like even Glenn Greenwald, George Orwell, I think Christopher Hitchens as well in his own way. And yeah, I guess that's my answer.
Good picks, although I do dispute your characterization of Thomas Sowell as a hero. For me, a hero is someone who for whom there is a massive cost to what they're doing.
True. I mean, I
don't think there is for him.
Well, I mean,
or has been.
This is a man.
If he were born, if he were in his prime now, there would be massive costs.
But he was invited to join the Reagan administration and turned the job down because he believed that he would have to then sacrifice his platform and his ability to tell the truth, because politics ultimately requires that you lie. So he turned down a job in the Reagan administration in order to continue writing and researching, which I consider to be. I think qualify at the beginning that I'm judging based on heroic qualifications, not necessarily judging heroes as a category. I think that's heroic behavior, not necessarily because I don't like the idea that people are heroes anyway.
And for me, I'm going to have to pick a cliched example here. I think Churchill is my hero in real life. I've been reading the biography Andrew Roberts did of him, and I've also been reading Churchill's history of the Second World War, and he's so admirable. I can't read anything about him and not, my admiration is increased every time I read about him. I think he was a real hero. He faced overwhelming odds. He stuck to principles. He was he almost died like 10 times in his entire life. He fell off a tree, or I don't know how he managed this, but when he was about 12, he fell off a tree and nearly died. He was hit by a car about 3 times in his life. I think he was involved in a train accident, survived. He was shot at, and famously said that there's nothing more exhilarating in life than being shot at without effect. He almost died so many times. It was almost as though, as he said himself, he was walking with destiny, and that destiny wanted him to stay alive for this hour, this need. He would definitely be one of my real life heroes.
But he meets
and various saints as well. I would point to as a Christian.
I mean, that description of, it's Macaulay's The Lays of Ancient Rome, isn't it? How can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods? Probably encompasses Churchill, and that would be probably the most concise description of heroic behavior or heroic mindset that you can find. I think that encompasses Churchill.
Yeah.
Certainly. Anyone who meets that standard probably would be worthy of being called a hero.
Also Enoch Powell, I'd add him into that.
In a way, yeah. I mean, I think for the same reason, truth-telling at the expense of personal reputation and personal fortune.
Yes.
All political careers end in failure, but he chose his. But he did so because he very firmly believed that he had the facts on his side in certain things. I think, and that's what I invoked sort of Glenn Greenwald for a reason, which is that, I think it's important to recognize that there are heroes that you don't necessarily think are perfect. I think behavior is a more useful judge for a hero than sort of complete adulation or idolization. It's important to recognize that many people you disagree with demonstrate heroic courage, but we don't really have the heroic conception anymore. I mean, the Greeks were very big on heroes. They had very specific criteria to be judged. In fact, it was a whole qualification system. When Hephaestion died, and Alexander the Great goes way back to the oracles and says, "Look, I want Hephaestion to be made a divine hero," because hero was an actual definitive position that you would hold, and it entailed certain facts about your afterlife. And if you're Alexander the Great and you are so close to someone as he was to Hephaestion, then you are very concerned that he is recognized as they conceived of themselves as being the Achilles and Patroclus of their age. And so the Greeks were big on the heroic conception. I think the word has lingered in our language way beyond the actual idea. And now we sort of vaguely have this sense that heroes do big, impressive things, but without really knowing what qualifies them for that title, or what the title entails, or precisely what things qualify. And I think I'd quite like to see that come back, that sense that the proper definitional hero of human civilization is a sign of a culture that aspires to something, as opposed to one which is merely vaguely impressed by impressive deeds.
Yeah, there are two conceptions of the hero at work here. There's the Miltonian one, which is he also serves who only stands and waits, which is the father who his acts are unwritten and numberless, but contribute to the good overall. He also serves who only stands and waits, and I can think of plenty of people like that. I mean, one of my next YouTube videos will be on the Carlylean conception of the hero as the principle of historical cause and effect. Carlyle famously said, "We've got it all wrong when we think that society is ordered hierarchically. It's not; it's ordered hierarchically." So it's a very interesting question. But I would agree with you that we lack heroes. Like I said earlier, of the Napoleonic stature, or even the Nelsonian stature, I should say, as an Englishman. We lack those great military and political and intellectual figures who we I won't say fawn over, because that implies something base and sycophantic, but someone who would really get behind en masse, and we don't really have those people anymore.
No.
And the people that we do, to any extent, are distinctly unimpressive. I mean, Boris Johnson's barnstorming victory in 2000.
Trump is running again. He's the great white hope.
He's not a hero, though, because he's done nothing to sacrifice himself. He's a cad.
Sacrifice all to himself. I think because we're so close to the end, let's power through, because the next question is not very interesting, which are, what are your favorite names? I don't give a fuck, so I'm not going to answer that question, really.
Isaac. Oh, yeah. Christopher.
Sebastian's a nice name.
Sebastian's a nice name. Sophia. Charlotte, I've always liked. If I ever had a boat, I called Charlotte.
Alexander, good strong
Alexander. Name. Nice sort of resounding multi-syllable names. If I had a son called Alexander, for instance, and I learned that he was being called Alex in the playground, I'd storm into the playground and string up the kids calling him Alex and say, "No, you call my son Alexander."
You have to teach your son to string up people who call him.
Yes, exactly.
He has to learn to value these things himself. Also, if he hasn't conquered the known world by the age of 24, then what good is he?
Maximus I like as well. 32, what is it that you most dislike? I mean, surely that's been covered.
I think we've done that.
Yeah.
Idiocy and poor taste.
Yeah.
33, what is your greatest regret?
Oh. Greatest regret. I'm cool. I don't know how to answer
that. Vaguely wrong decisions, but
that's
as specific as I'll get.
Yeah, wrong decisions. Likewise. Question 34: how would you like to die?
By facing fearful odds. For the ashes of my fathers and the temples of my gods. Well, Evelyn Waugh went on a toilet, didn't he? I think
he went on a toilet on Easter Day.
Yeah, which is not the most dignified way of going. I think I would want to do something more than that. However, what appears on my headstone will not necessarily be the manner of my death. Going back to the earlier question, when is it acceptable to lie? If you have the opportunity to say on your gravestone, he died saving 5 children from a burning building, it doesn't really matter. No one will remember if that's what you really did. I don't know. I think quickly and unawares would be my answer.
Well, Jeremy Clarkson's answer to this question was fighting a tiger in a decaying nuclear reactor.
Why?
Because it's epic.
But what is the tiger doing? That you won't save the nuclear reactor. The tiger isn't responsible for the nuclear reactor decaying.
But the point is, everyone will talk about you forever after. That was that guy who died fighting a tiger.
Until some inconvenient person says, "But why did you do that?" And then
it doesn't matter, because you died fighting a tiger. That's the point. It's unbeatable. I know I give a fairly simple answer to that question, and a serious one. I would like to die surrounded by my family at home.
So you can tell them how much they've disappointed
you. And how they've been written out of the will. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking around this long. It's been 2 hours, 13 minutes.
We haven't done super chats yet, but
55 seconds. We'll get to that. Yeah. The last question. Question 35. Fuck you, Proust. What is your motto?
Something pithy.
Is that the motto?
It's an ironic statement.
I've got one. Subscribe, like, share, super chats,
Like, share, and
Patreon, all the
subscribe.
rest. No, but seriously, what is your motto? Love is the opposite of hate.
Mm-hmm.
Go for that. No, sorry, that's the wrong. That's a truism. Love
Yes.
is the opposite of power. Love is the opposite
That's
of power.
slightly more interesting. I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Yeah. Love is the opposite of power. Power is conditional. It's greedy. It knows only the means and not the end, because you have to constantly grasp new levers of power. Love is an end unto itself, and it has no considerations of power, because the ideal of love in all its forms is to carry on loving in the face of everything that tells you to stop loving. So yeah, love is the opposite of power would be my motto if I had one, which I don't because it's cheesy.
That's why I'm balking at
Yes.
this question. There have been many great sort of mottos or slogans or statements of intent. Mary Reynolds has Alexander's defined as each moment free from fear makes a man immortal. I like that there's a part in Northern Lights, Philip Pullman's book. It's the duty of the old to be anxious on the part of the young. It's the duty of the young to scorn the anxiety of the old. George Bernard Shaw, writing about free speech, said that your ultimate duty and your right as an Englishman is to scandalize your uncles, which I think is admirable.
Is that after or before your uncles have scandalized your own family at the Christmas party?
The implication, yes. I don't know. My very vague and loose form of that is just demand better.
Here lies Little Platoon, says Tom Abella, died tragically rescuing his family from the wreckage of a destroyed sinking battleship. Measure twice, cut once. That's a good one.
Yes.
I will add to that. Someone I greatly admire in real life said to me, "Work is hard, do the work." And there's a lot in that, I think. Work is hard, do the work. Yeah.
Bottoms up.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's good practice in sex and in drinking. So I think that brings us to the end of the Proust questionnaire. However, there might be a couple of super chats that you might want to get through.
Yes.
So thank you again, chap, for sticking with us this long as we expire before your very eyes. You're going to have to click away from. Let me just conduct the stream. You've got notifications over the stream, which you need to get rid of because you can't see basic StreamYard's functionality if your Apple Mac is telling you shit. Start. Hit start.
Hit start. Will do.
You've now clicked something you didn't need to click. There you go.
There we are. Okay.
We've done the top.
Yeah, we've done that. Thank you very much, Princess Fiona, for
$2.
For $2. Describe your guitars, please.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have
describe them lovingly with poetry.
Lovingly with poetry. No, I can't. Anytime anyone asks me to do that, I can't do it. I have a jet black Manson MB1 electric, which is one of Matt Bellamy's earlier guitars, I think, because Muse a sort of formative musical influence. I have a 12-string, which is sort of sunburst red. Has a nice ring to it, and I have a sort of deep navy blue acoustic electric Faith Blue Moon, I think it is, which is the default sort of go-to guitar, which is slightly weird. It has a very strange mid-range, which doesn't really exist, but it has good bass and treble. But that's the one I've been learning on, and it's served me well so far.
That's as close as you'll get to the Little Platoon describing his harem of women. Contrarian 420, who has very kindly donated $2, says Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy opinion.
This is for you, Devin.
This is for me. One of the most significant and brilliant works of American literature ever, up there by far with Herman Melville's Moby Dick. It's fantastic. The figure of the judge is quite clearly a Miltonian figure. There are very many passages, including the one where he makes gunpowder on top of the mountain, that are taken wholesale from Milton in a sense. The prose style is brilliant. Everything, it's freighted with philosophy, Schopenhauer in particular. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it highly to enough people. It's just brilliant.
I think I know some Milton.
You do know some
Yes,
Milton.
into
You're
this
going to
wild
show
abyss,
off. Yes.
the womb of nature and perhaps her grave, where neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all these in their pregnant causes mixed confusedly, and which thus must ever fight, unless the Almighty Maker them ordain his dark materials to create more worlds. Into this wild abyss the very fiends stood upon the brink of hell and looked a while, pondering his voyage, for no narrow frith he had to cross. Yeah, I think the frith thing applies to starting any live stream.
Very impressive.
God
but
knows
rushed.
how many devils you'll have to encounter.
Rushed. You have to slow down.
Oh,
reciting
yeah, but that would
poetry.
be self-indulgent, as opposed to actually
As a-
quoting Milton.
yes.
That's,
Thank you very much, Tom Abella. It's a lovely profile picture, presumably of him. I hope of him with a baby,
which I hope
presumably your baby. Yes. Thank you very much for your $5. Much appreciated. He says, which writer is 1, well regarded, 2, you're mostly unimpressed with, but 3, you don't want to say because maybe you just need to read a little more. Oh, that's an interesting question.
Ian McEwan.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I've read one book of his. I thought it felt Solar.
Solar, even, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ian McEwan. I would probably say Salman Rushdie as well, but that's because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong about being unimpressed with Salman Rushdie. It's just that he requires a lot of patience, which I have not yet applied to him. Ian McEwan definitely, though, is someone who is quite well regarded, and I vaguely enjoy his stuff, but I don't really see the acclaim or the cause for the acclaim. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else
apart from being stabbed in the eye.
Well, that's Salman Rushdie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought those who you.
No. I reverted back to McEwan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody else.
Paul Coelho, who did The Alchemist, I think it was.
I defer to you.
Everyone seems to love him. I have never read him. Yeah. Yeah, most contemporary writers I'm unimpressed by. I do not think that the current state of Anglo literature, English language literature, is any good. I just am depressed by it. Sally Rooney, for instance, I opened one of her books, I think Normal People it was, and wanted to kill myself after page 3. It was utterly ridiculous. But everyone is impressed by her, apparently. She's well regarded. Kyle Haight, with a banging necklace or lanyard or something like that, says literary heroes can provide a concretization of a worldview that inspires in a way that abstract ideas cannot. Yeah, this just plays into the whole the local is the universal, as opposed to what you would think intuitively, that actually the more global, the more universal you get, the more insightful you get. On the contrary, I mean, a great work of literature such as Middlemarch, which is situated between 1 or 2 villages in Yorkshire, I think, says more about human nature than probably adaptations of Star Trek do.
Yeah, I mean, the individual sort of consolidates a huge number of quite disparate abstract ideas of greatness. So you can talk in vague terms about the importance of bravery, or the importance of courage, or the importance of love, virtue, morality. But if you want to really understand those things, or to see them condensed in a way that makes them more understandable, then yeah, condensing those into a literary figure who demonstrates those qualities in practice enables people to fully understand what they mean when they're talking about something like bravery, courage, virtue, morality, and love. And to that end, yes, I agree that heroes are an important thing, certainly in literature. I just also think that having understood them in literary figures or fictional figures, you should be able to identify them on your own terms. You shouldn't have to, if all you're doing is saying, well, this person I read about, or this person I saw on TV did this thing, therefore it's heroic. I think you're probably missing the fundamental part of that heroism, which is the foremost understanding of the quality you're demonstrating. You have to be able to identify it in yourself, not just parrot somebody else's conception of greatness. So it's a good point and well taken, but with that qualification.
Good answer. Finally, J space hyphen space D space hyphen space has very kindly donated $5. Thank you very much. I love your picture. I think that's Spartan soldiers, is that? He says, any idea, or she says, any ideas for exercises on being able to better use the English language in writing? for an aspiring author. You two are the best at what you do. Well, that is very kind.
That's far
That's
too
very
kind.
flattering. Yes.
Read.
You must have been reading my Substack. This is the only explanation.
Read a lot, and also read people. I think this goes back to the Martin Amis point, and given that he died recently, it's probably right to eulogize him at least one more time. Read people who you don't necessarily like what they say, but you really enjoy how they say it, or you appreciate the greatness in how they say it. As we talked earlier, I think Kingsley Amis is a better storyteller than Martin Amis is, but Martin Amis is the foremost prose stylist that the English language has produced probably in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So read a lot. Poetry is a big help, because poetry really, it sort of engenders in you the appreciation for the rhythm of a sentence, and the melody of a sentence. Words they're more musical than people give them credit for. Academic prose is dry and without any kind of song to it, but poetry tells you the best. What that is the quote, isn't it? That fiction is the words in their best order, and poetry is the best words in their best order. You will be able to find a poet somewhere who you really enjoy. Most people sort of look away from poetry, and I understand why, because most poetry is abysmal, but there are great poets who are great for a reason. You'll find someone who really resonates with you, and it's worth reading around just to find who that person is, and then you sort of hear the way they construct a sentence, and you listen to the sentence as you would listen to a song. And just as anyone can sort of sing the chorus for their favorite song, actually reading poetry, reciting poetry, or hearing the melody in a sentence isn't dissimilar from that. So read a lot, read poetry particularly, and read prose stylists, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. And be expansive in who you read and how you read.
Yes, I would add to that, agreeing with everything you've just said. Consider prose and writing an extension of rhetoric. Too many modern, too many style guides and modern authors will say, cut this adverb, cut adverbs just without exception, just cut them all, reduce everything to its most simple machinery. That's the wrong way of going about things. Prose and writing is an extension of rhetoric. It's the effect. Consider read what you write out loud, and if it sounds good out loud, it will probably sound good to other people. So don't consider, don't just write for the page, particularly if you're trying to do YouTube videos, for instance. I've made this mistake in the past. Write dry academic stuff. Consider writing an extension of rhetoric, and rhetoric is an exercise in convincing and persuading and corralling and inspiring emotion in people. And very kindly just given another $5. Yeah, thank you very much, JD. An extension of rhetoric. I would recommend a book if I'm, if that's all right to give a book recommendation. It's called Ward Farnsworth is his name, the author, Ward Farnsworth, Classical English Style, and he basically he goes through Lincoln and Churchill and all these other great writers and speakers, and basically says, look, their writing was an extension of their speaking, and great writers they have an ear for how they sound when read out loud.
Also, have fun with it and have an appreciation for contrast. For all, it may sound impressive to be able to put a sentence in as many words as possible. Sometimes the best possible answer to any point is just fuck off. And that's genuinely one of the best uses of English prose ever. Contrast is key. Evelyn Waugh was great at that. Be highfalutin as much as you want, but have fun with it. And fun is in subverting expectations, weirdly. Don't be afraid of being brusque and blunt and swearing, because swearing is very entertaining, as long as you use it properly, I think.
I'd add to that, finally, use variety. So a lot of modern writing style guides will advise that you use short words and short sentences and short paragraphs and all the rest of it without exception, and that's terrible advice. Use a variety of sentences and styles and words and everything. You can have I think Oscar Wilde, I think it was Oscar Wilde, he said something like, the beauty of the English language is that you can say you are the absolute personification of perfection, or you can say you're fit. you look good, you're sexy. You know, you can go from the
Four.
Latin, four. You can go from the Latin to the Saxon, and the same applies with sentence length and word choice and everything. So use the variety available to you in the English language. Short sentences followed by long sentences. Variety.
But as Abraham Lincoln said, I've been speaking for coming up for 2.5 hours.
Yes,
so that's probably the end of the stream.
I think that's Ben. That's Ben's euphemistic way of saying he needs a wee, and he wants the stream. So I will thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for all the super chats. Very, very kind of you. It's that kind of charity that keeps the lights on. Thank you for joining us. State of Disunion is every Wednesday, unless there's anything else that unless it's not on Wednesday, in which case you can assume that
it's every Wednesday, unless it's not on Wednesday.
It's not on Wednesday.
Some other day.
Some other day. Ben will be a regular guest or a semi-regular guest, and I hope to be inviting other people on at some point. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. This has been the Proust Questionnaire, and have a lovely evening.
Good night.
Yes.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Now watch him boomer the ending of the stream.
End broadcast.
That's the button you click. Yep, that's the one.
Clicking the button.
You have to click it again.
They're hearing this.
Bye.